So guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we explore the fanfic of What If Naruto Returned After 5 Years as an Akatsuki Girl. Before part 1 started, do like, share and subscribe. Now let's enjoy. 5 years later, Uchiha Sasuke frowned inwardly as he walked out of the darkened building. As usual, he was the last to leave the Hokage Tower, and the stars were winking in the Prussian blue sky that was almost the same shade as his hair. The brunette didn't bother to nod to the two Chunin guards at the main door. He had been ignoring them for years. He wasn't about to start acknowledging them now. He slid his hands into the pockets of his standard-issue Jounin pants that he wore with the usual dark blue Jounin long-sleeve turtleneck and dark green Konoha vest. They were sufficient, he supposed. He didn't particularly like it, but wearing the same outfit for years allowed him to get used to it, although he mostly still preferred the loose Haori-like top he used to wear when at Otogekure. At least with that shirt, he could shuck it off easily to make way for the wings his level 2 curse seal transformation came with. He had worked through quite a number of Jounin turtlenecks and Konoha vests due to the transformation. Well, he always got new ones free of charge, so he wasn't complaining. Perk of the job. It was just the hassle of having to replace ripped uniforms that irked him. Sasuke started towards his apartment. He had been given a rather spacious apartment in a quiet district, and he didn't have to pay rent for it, only the utilities. It was another perk of the job. He snorted at the foolish generosity of the Council of Konoha. ANBU 12's report scroll. He stopped short as the thought popped into his head, then scowled to himself. Careless. He scolded himself, then quickly turned around and retraced his steps. The Chunin door guards raised their eyebrows a little at his return, but he ignored them and went in, heading straight to the office next to the Hokage's. He passed the Hokage's quarters and noted that no light was coming from the crack under the door. Tsunade must be asleep. He continued on towards the office and passed the Hokage's library on his right. He was about to take another step past the library door when his keen eyes noted something amiss. The door was opened a crack. Sasuke was instantly on the alert, Sharingan activated. He knew for a fact that the door had been closed and locked with chakra seals when he left. He scoffed at the simplicity of the chakra seals. No one had the authorization to access the library except the Hokage, the council elders, Sakura as the chief medic, the ANBU commander and vice commander, and himself. The brunette pressed himself beside the library door, and a brace of kunai and shuriken appeared in each hand. He quickly sensed for chakra signatures within his vicinity and found none. That, however, didn't mean much, and he knew it. Any A and S-rank shinobi and even some B-rank nins would know how to effectively mask their chakra if they weren't performing jutsu. Just then, he felt a faint chakra flare from inside the library. The unknown ninja must have used either an escape jutsu or a concealment jinjutsu, Sasuke reasoned, then scoffed. If the unknown ninja had used a concealment jinjutsu, it would have done him as much good as trying to hide an elephant behind one's back, since Sasuke had the Sharingan. But what troubled Sasuke when he felt the chakra was the familiarity of it. It was one that he felt he should know, yet couldn't swear as to its owner. He gritted his teeth. The chakra felt vaguely like that idiot's, but it couldn't possibly be his. Thinking about the idiot made his heart hurt, so he shoved all thoughts of the idiot out of his head for the moment. He could brood about the idiot at home like he did every night, and adjusted his grip on his weapons before slinking noiselessly into the library. With the Sharingan, he could easily pick out a humanoid shape pressed against the wall, its chakra glowing around its body. Sasuke slipped into an attacking stance and called out, "I know you're there against the wall. Show yourself and give up." The brunette watched the figure stiffen when his voice rang out. Then, was the person trembling lightly? He could see the person's chakra rippling lightly, indicative of trembling, before the person took a deep breath and dispelled the jinjutsu. Sasuke scowled. He could no longer see the chakra outline, and neither could he see the person in the dark. He tensed, ready to fling his weapons at a second's notice when the person sighed and spoke, seemingly to himself. "Of all people to find me, it had to be you, didn't it?" Sasuke felt a surge of nervousness and annoyance. Nervousness because, like the chakra, the person's voice was vaguely familiar. He was sure he had heard something like this voice before, and yet it wasn't the exact same voice he remembered. Annoyance because he couldn't be sure of the voice nor the chakra. "Who are you? Show yourself," he demanded, and kicked open the door behind him. Dim light from the corridor spilled into the library, casting a rectangle of light on the floor in front of the door. If Sasuke could have had his way, he'd probably attack and capture the unknown ninja right away, the ninja probably missing a limb or two. However, because of his job and the fact that they were in the Hokage's library, an extensive collection of valuable scrolls, meant that he had to take it slow, however much his hands itched to draw his chikudo. 2 tense seconds passed. Then Sasuke heard a reluctant sigh, followed by footsteps shuffling nearer to where he was. Soon feet appeared in the dim light, followed quickly by a body covered in a long black cloak with red cloud designs outlined in white. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, remaining in his attacking stance. The ninja, however, kept his head and face out of the light. "Akatsuki," Sasuke growled softly. He quickly formed a few hand seals, and within 5 seconds an ANBU squad surrounded him, tense and alert as they faced the Akatsuki member. The intruder was rather small in size, from what Sasuke could see. He couldn't determine whether the ninja was a male or female, since the ridiculous cloak effectively disguised any body shape. Sasuke squinted as his gaze rested on the cloaked nin's chest. Was it him, or did the chest area swell a little? "Take him into custody," Sasuke ordered the ANBU in a cold, authoritative voice. With a quick nod, the 4 ANBU members quickly tied down the Akatsuki member's hands by her sides using chakra-enforced wires, and bound the person's feet as well. The cloaked figure fell to its butt when its feet were tied, and the Konoha nin were treated to a selection of curses. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. Why didn't the Akatsuki member put up a fight? Satisfied that the bound figure was secure, Sasuke slipped his weapons back into their holsters while smoothly turning on his heel and striding out of the library. "Bring the prisoner to the Hokage's office and guard him while I wake the Godame. If he escapes, you will be demoted, if you're not dead yet." "You weren't kidding," Tsunade said in a slightly awed voice as she took in the seated figure of the restrained Akatsuki member in front of her. Beside the Hokage, Sasuke resisted the urge to snort in irritated disdain. "Joking? Him?" Tsunade strode to her desk and seated herself. She leaned forward and rested her elbows on her desk, with her fingers interlaced. "Who are you, and what does Akatsuki want from my library?" she asked authoritatively. Sasuke stood beside her, observing the prisoner surrounded by the ANBU squad in front of the Hokage's desk. Strangely enough, the prisoner hadn't so much as twitched, much less tried to escape when he went to fetch the Godame. In the light, he could see that the Akatsuki member had bright yellow hair, a shade that he had seen only on one other person. The rather spiky hairstyle painfully reminded him of him as well, although Sasuke was quick to observe that this person's hair was long and went down into the collar of the cloak. There was no way that this person could be him. He would never have kept his hair that long. They couldn't observe the nin's face, though, since the prisoner had their head bowed, and the yellow bangs and ridiculously high collar of the cloak were doing a good job of hiding the person's face. It was obvious, however, that the person was wearing a scratched Hitai 8 around his forehead. Sasuke couldn't make out the insignia on the metal plate. At the Hokage's voice, the prisoner gave an almost imperceptible flinch and very slowly raised their head. Sasuke froze and felt himself stop breathing, and he could hear the Hokage's breath hitch beside him. A woman's face stared back at them with disturbingly familiar features, beautiful cerulean blue eyes and 3 whisker marks on each cheek. The whisker marks creased a little as the woman grinned, although there was no humor in her guarded, almost dead eyes. "Heyo bacon, Yuru. Long time no see, eh?" Sasuke's heart nearly stopped. Could it be? Tsunade beat him to the question. "And Naruto?" she breathed shakily. The blonde prisoner raised her eyebrows sarcastically. "Who, Uzumaki Naruto?" she asked in a mocking tone. "Last I heard of him," she continued, emphasizing the last word, "he was dead." Sasuke's heart plunged to his feet and felt blood drain from his face. "It can't be. That idiot, he can't die. You're lying." Sasuke's voice rose to an unheard-of pitch and volume by the last sentence. Tsunade interjected at the same time. "That's impossible. Naruto wouldn't die so easily." The woman laughed a mocking laugh that grated on Sasuke's ears. "Who said he died an easy death?" she asked. Her voice gave nothing away. "Who are you?" the Godame demanded, pounding a fist onto her desk, causing it to crack loudly. The blonde snickered in cold amusement. "Careful, Obacon. You'll probably be needing a new desk soon. And team, can't even respect the dead. Huh? Must you still call him an idiot? Only Naruto is allowed to call me Obacon/team." Both Tsunade and Sasuke retorted heatedly at the same time. The blonde prisoner chuckled. "Right? Which means that I'm allowed to." Killing intent leaked from Sasuke as his Sharingan activated. "Stop playing games, Ana. Who are you and why are you here? And why do you look so much like the Dobe?" Like Naruto? The brunette demanded. His last two words were put in rather hesitantly. Tsunade's face crumpled. You are Naruto, aren't you? I don't know what's going on, but I would swear you are Uzumaki Naruto. You would, huh? Funny thing is, I, on the other hand, would swear that I am not Uzumaki Naruto. The younger blonde replied, a cocky, mocking look on her face. She grinned, a little sourly. Uzumaki Naruto is dead. Sasuke exploded angrily. You are Uzumaki Naruto. Stop denying it. His hands curled into tight fists. The whisker-marked blonde merely smirked at him. I am not Uzumaki Naruto, she enunciated clearly, as if she was talking to a child. Her eyes narrowed and her face darkened. I should know. I was there when he died. At that, Sasuke's chakra spiked, and in an instant, he had raised his hand. From his palm, a blade of pure Raitun chakra had shot out and was hovering dangerously near the blonde Akatsuki member's throat. Killing intent leaked from the Godame, who had a furious aura and expression. You were there and you did nothing to stop him from being killed? Tsunade growled dangerously. She did nothing to stop Sasuke. The Akatsuki member didn't seem intimidated at all. She merely chuckled darkly. Couldn't have helped him as much as I wanted to. My hands were tied, she explained nonchalantly, her dull blue eyes observing the Godame and Sasuke intently. Suddenly, her eyes widened as they focused on the brunette. That kanji. You're wearing the kanji for fire. You're the Hokage candidate, she exclaimed. It sounded like her throat had gone dry. Sasuke glanced at his right arm. There was a red armband there about a shuriken in breadth having a white square with the kanji for fire in it in red. It symbolized that he was technically the Rokudame, and was currently being trained and groomed to take over when the Godame stepped down. Sasuke growled mentally. The armband, the position of Rokudame, was nothing but coals of fire on his head. It should have been the Dobe's job. He had wanted it, not Sasuke. Sasuke felt like he had stolen the Dobe's dream from him. Each day on the job, every minute wearing the hated armband was a reminder of how he had stolen the Dobe's dream. Never mind that he had practically been forced, on the pain of a future worse than death, to step up as Rokudame. The council had thought he would grow to love the village as he took on responsibility as the next head of the village. But so far Sasuke never felt anything akin to the slightest affection for the place. It figures. They'd want Uchiha Sasuke as their Hokage, the Yuru who betrayed the village, and they still want him. Let's all forget about the poor Jinchuriki who kept the Kyuubi at bay for 15 years. Let's just ignore the fact that he died holding on to the demon so it wouldn't escape. Let's just not care that he suffered hell for trying to stop the Akatsuki from getting their dirty hands on the kitsune. The blonde woman muttered bitterly. Sasuke felt that the words were like kunai being driven deep into his beating heart. Beside him, Tsunade took a shuddering breath, trying to compose herself. It was a shame, really, the way just one person could send the current Hokage and Hokage to be into such a worked-up state. Only that one person was capable of it, Uzumaki Naruto. The Godame leaned back in her chair, and Sasuke observed a flicker of emotion play on the younger blonde's face. It was obvious the Akatsuki woman didn't even realize Sasuke's Raitun blade had dispelled when she said her little piece. When Tsunade started speaking again, however, the other woman's face hardened into a mocking grin and blank eyes again. You say you were there when Naruto died, Tsunade said. Sasuke could tell she was making an effort to stay calm, although it wasn't perceptible to most. The unknown blonde woman seemed to have noticed it, though, since her mocking grin became wider than before. Tell us how he died. Explain the circumstances. The Akatsuki woman exhaled noisily and cocked her head to one side, a gesture that forcibly reminded Sasuke of Naruto. How dare this woman deny that she's Naruto? What's going on? The Naruto look-alike leaned back and closed her eyes, her face stony. It happened about 3 months after he left this village. He had been living in the forests, avoiding patrols and retrieval teams the Hokage had sent. He ended up getting caught by the leader of Akatsuki himself after a fierce struggle. He was brought to their hideout, where the remaining members of the Akatsuki tried to extract the bijou from his seal. They tried for almost 7 days because of their reduction in numbers and the strength of OT of the Yandame's seal, as well as the Jinchuriki's willpower in holding the Kyuubi back. It is 7 days of pure pain and hell for him, and in the end he couldn't stand it. The seal cracked and he died a painful death due to an overload of chakra in his system. The Akatsuki didn't manage to extract the bijou. She recited the story in a monotone, and opened her blank blue eyes when done. Tsunade's eyes were glimmering with unshed tears, and a bead escaped to trail down her cheek. Sasuke's usually expressionless face showed pain, regret, and guilt. The Akatsuki woman shifted in her seat. You keep saying they. You weren't involved, Sasuke questioned. His voice was a little thick from the emotion he was repressing. The woman nodded, a faintly cheerful expression on her face. Yeah, I'm new. I was recruited after Uzumaki died. But I'm not involved in bijou extraction, though. Tsunade glared at her. What is your name? Why is it that we have never heard of you? The other blonde shook her head to move a blonde lock of hair out of her eye. As the strands of hair hanging in front of her face moved, Sasuke caught sight of the scratched Hitai-8 on her forehead. His heart sank. Naruto would never wear a scratched Hitai-8, much less scratch his. But something about that Hitai-8 was off. Before Sasuke could observe it more, the blonde hair settled over the Hitai-8 again, partially obscuring it. His attention turned to the woman's answer. My name? The blonde asked in a mockingly thoughtful tone and pretended to think for a second. My name's not important. Maybe I'll tell you later if I feel like it. As to why you've never heard of me, well, let's just say I'm one of Akatsuki's well-guarded secrets. Up till today, only the main group knew about me. Sasuke folded his arms and glared at the prisoner. What kind of answer is that? He growled. The blonde woman grinned cheekily at him. The only kind you'll be getting from me. The brunette's hand shot up and the chakra blade shot out. His eyebrow raised a fraction. The blade couldn't seem to touch the blonde, who was smirking smugly at him. He tried to extend the blade. It should have pierced the blonde's cheek by now, since it was within range, but try as he might, he couldn't touch her. His Sharingan activated in an instant, and with it he saw a layer of chakra like a protective shield enveloping the blonde, and his Raiton blade couldn't pierce the shield. Raiton's only weakness was futon. Could it be that the blonde woman's chakra was futon chakra? He glared and dispelled his blade. So, the Akatsuki member began conversationally. What will you be doing with me now? Tsunade folded her arms under her ample chest and narrowed her eyes at the woman, who was unfazed. Since you've been less than forthcoming with your answers, standard procedure dictates we wake Marino Ibiki up and hand you over to him, and believe me, he's cranky when you wake him up in the middle of the night. Ah, I see you've heard of him, Tsunade remarked, noting how the prisoner had turned a shade paler at the mention of the man's name. You could do yourself a favor and answer our questions if you dislike meeting Ibiki that much. The Godame leaned forward, rested her elbows on the cracked desk and laced her fingers together. What were you after in my library? The tied-up blonde stared back at Tsunade for a long moment, her eyes carefully blank. Then she sighed loudly and flopped back in her seat and shifted to indicate how uncomfortable she was with the wires that were actually cutting into her skin, causing it to bleed. The same scroll Uzumaki stole 8 years ago, she exhaled. Her expression was non-committal, but Sasuke could see that her eyes were watching Tsunade for a reaction. Tsunade stiffened, though her expression remained unruffled. To Sasuke's surprise, 3 of the 4 ANBU surrounding the Akatsuki woman stiffened as well. The younger blonde chuckled and glanced up at the masked faces of her guards. Hee, I see you remember what happened 8 years ago. Or maybe you're more worried about what's in the scroll. Sasuke turned to Tsunade and raised an eyebrow faintly. Why was it such a big deal? However, it was the other blonde who answered with a smirk. The first jutsu on that scroll is what helped Uzumaki pass his academy exams, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. But I guess that's not of interest to Leader Sama. What he's really interested in, though, she paused for effect, smirking, is the detailed description of Ota of the Yandame's Shiki Fujin, Shirsho Fuin and Hak no Fuin Shiki. Tsunade sucked in air harshly. Sasuke considered the information sealing techniques. Could it be? Those were the seals Minato used to seal the Kyuubi into Naruto with. The Godame breathed, her face worried. Ah, so that's why there's such a fuss over the scroll. You'd think they'd guard such an important scroll more tightly, Sasuke thought, and mentally snorted in disdain. Minato? I've never heard that name before. Well, Leader Sama said he's interested in that, and I bet the gang and I could learn a few other things from the scroll, too. The blonde grinned. Then, before the Konoha Nins could say anything, the woman stiffened and her eyes became distant and unfocused for a few seconds. The Leaf Nin watched her cautiously. Ah, well? The woman snapped out of her daze. It seems pain in the ass wants me back. Gotta go, boys. In a mere second, she had released a shocking wave of chakra that caused the wires binding her to snap, and in another 2 seconds she had flashed through the seals for Kanashibari no Jutsu, causing everyone in the room to freeze. Sasuke cursed himself for being caught off guard like that. It was embarrassing. He quickly worked on calling up enough chakra to nullify the bodybind jutsu. But in the meantime, the blonde Akatsuki member had formed the seals for Shunshin no Jutsu. She paused on the last hand seal, then turned around and eyed the frozen occupants of the room. "I'm probably gonna regret this," she muttered, her gaze roving, then pausing on Tsunade before landing on Sasuke's eyes. She gave a cheeky grin and continued in a louder voice, "But seeing as how nice it was to catch up with you guys and all, I'll tell you something." The woman's eyes grew hard, and her grin widened. "My name is Namikaze Naruto." With that, her fingers instantly contorted into the last hand seal and she disappeared with a poof. A second after the poof was heard, the Konoha nin found themselves able to move. Sasuke was feeling angry and embarrassed at being caught in such a simple jutsu, and for letting such an important prisoner escape literally under his nose. He was pretty sure the ANBU were berating themselves, too. Namikaze? That name held not significance to Sasuke, but before anyone could say anything, Tsunade crumpled back into her chair and released a shuddering sob. "And Namikaze," she said shakily. Sasuke noted one of the ANBU. Sasuke thought he might be the oldest of the squad. Hadn't relaxed, and in fact had tensed even more after what Tsunade said. The Godame took a few deep breaths and looked up. Sasuke wasn't surprised to see tear stains on her face. "ANBU 9, you are not to speak of anything you have seen or heard in this room tonight, you understand? Not to your fellow shinobi, fellow ANBU, not to your superiors, and definitely not to the council." "Hi!" The squad bowed smartly. Tsunade nodded. "Good. Now, your mission is to retrieve the Toad Sanin Jiraiya for me. Start with the women's bathhouses, then the sake houses. Track him down and get him here at all costs. You have your orders." "Hokage-sama!" The squad saluted smartly, bowed again and disappeared together in a puff of smoke. When the last of the smoke dissipated, Tsunade leaned back, pulled open a drawer, extracting a sake bottle and 2 saucers from it. She poured the sake into the saucers, downed one, paused, then took the bottle straight to her lips, bypassing the saucer. Sasuke's face went back to its default setting of expressionless, although on the inside he frowned disgustedly at the Godame. He had found out that she was a drinker and a gambler, but these habits became worse after the Baka left the village. "Speaking of which, who is this Namikaze?" he asked bluntly. Tsunade ignored him in favor of another gulp of sake and burped gently. Sasuke could see the Godame's cheeks were starting to turn pink. He waited. Namikaze Minato was Konoha's best ever ninja. He was the Yondaime Hokage. Tsunade paused. Sasuke was beginning to get a nagging feeling at the back of his mind, like an important piece of the puzzle had been revealed. He waited some more as Tsunade took another gulp and closed her eyes. 20 years ago, the strongest of Yukai attacked Konoha, and as Hokage, Minato had to deal with it. As you know, Minato used the Shiki Fujin, Shursho Fuin, and Hak no Fuin Shiki to seal it into a newborn baby whose umbilical cord had just been cut. "I know that. That baby was Naruto." Sasuke cut in impatiently. Tsunade opened her eyes to glare at him and take another drink, then closed her eyes again. "Impatient brat. Let me finish," she snapped. What most people, in fact, the whole of Konoha, except for a select few, didn't know was that Namikaze Minato actually sealed the Kyuubi into the Tsunade corrected herself. The child he had with his wife Uzumaki Kushina. Sasuke's eyes widened a little. That loud, idiotic Uzuritanki was the son of the revered Yondaime Hokage? He heard Tsunade chuckle darkly at his expression. "That's right, Uchiha Sasuke," she said mockingly. "The dead last of the academy, the hyperactive #1 most unpredictable ninja, your teammate and rival, the pariah of Konoha, is in fact the son of Konoha's hero." Sasuke's face returned to being expressionless, although many questions and emotions were churning in his eyes. Why wasn't Konoha informed? People would have looked at him differently. He wouldn't have been despised. Sasuke said angrily. Absently, he knew a major portion of the anger was directed at himself for his treatment of his former teammate, who was obviously the one who kept Konoha safe by keeping the Kyuubi at bay. But even as his words left his mouth, he knew the answer to his question, and Tsunade drunkenly confirmed it. Security reasons, of course. Twofold. 1. As the son of Konoha's Yellow Flash, he'd be targeted by his father's enemies. The whole of Iwagakure would be after him, and IWA wouldn't be alone. To add to that, Kushina herself was quite the kunoichi, though she was relatively unknown in Konoha. Since her enemies weren't as formidable as Minato's, Naruto was given her name. Tsunade took a breath. 2. That night Naruto was turned into a Jinchuriki. That made him extra valuable, and should anyone acquire him, they would definitely use him as their weapon, just like in Gaara's case. So there was no sense in giving Minato's enemies extra incentive in coming after Naruto. Tsunade massaged her temples. Do you really think they'd hate Naruto any less if they knew who his father was? Sasuke digested these words as he went to sit in one of the chairs in front of the Hokage's desk. The very chair the Akatsuki woman had occupied, he absently noted. Out of the corner of his eyes, he saw a small patch of blood on the wooden floor, probably from the woman when the chakra-enhanced wires had cut through her ankles. But what does all this have to do with that woman claiming to be Namake's Naruto? I mean, Uzumaki Naruto had always been a boy, and Namake's Naruto and Uzumaki Naruto. He trailed off, his eyes on the blood. They're probably one and the same, Tsunade said heavily, finishing the sentence for him. I don't know what happened. I had always known Naruto to be male, and this development certainly contradicts my previous knowledge. What about the possibility of an imposter? Sasuke asked, though he knew the answer to that question too. He was trying hard to wrap his mid around what had just happened. Tsunade seemed to know this, and answered wearily. The possibility is near nil. I did not detect any possession jutsu. Those always leave a chakra trail, unless it's one as advanced as Orochimaru's. And I can't help think that no one could fake that hair, that face, those scars, those eyes. Tsunade said quietly, and Sasuke agreed. And I'm sure you did not detect any genjutsu. HN. Sasuke made an affirmative noise. That means, he swallowed. Naruto's female. It would seem so, wouldn't it? Everyone, including Jiraiya and I, and from his duty logs, even Sarutobi-sensei, knew of Naruto as a male. Therefore, I would conclude that the whole genderbender idea was Minato's, that brat. He must have done it in conjunction with the Yukai sealing. If Namake's Naruto is Uzumaki Naruto, then she must have been describing her own death experience. Sasuke noted quietly. I suppose by death, she meant that she turned back from a boy to a girl. Tsunade squeezed her eyes shut, probably remembering what Naruto had to go through. I noticed that she said she was recruited after Uzumaki died. Yet she mentioned she was there during the failed Kyuubi extraction. I should have called her on it. Would have, if she hadn't disappeared so quickly. Sasuke had made the same observation. HN. A few minutes passed in silence, then. What do you want, Tsunade Heim? What's so important that you had an ANBU? Squad, wake me up from my precious sleep? How am I supposed to be refreshed enough to write tomorrow if I don't have enough sleep? Complained Jiraiya as he walked in. His face was grumpy and he was stomping in rather childishly. He marched you to the cracked Hokage's desk and stared Tsunade in the eyes, or rather eyelids, until she opened her bloodshot eyes. Uchiha. Give the report. The Godame murmured tiredly. Sasuke, too tired to care about protocol, gave his report from his hunched-over position in his seat. Jiraiya listened without interrupting the Rokudame's concise recap of the events. The Toad Sannin rubbed his chin thoughtfully. So Naruto's now a girl? Damn. I should have dispelled the henge myself when we were training, he said with a perverted grin. Tsunade growled and moved to punch the perverted old man. But before she could even pull back her hand, Jiraiya was already painfully lodged in the wall to her right. She blinked at the brunette in front of her, who had a fierce scowl on his face. His Sharingan were blazing and his hands were bunched up into fists. Don't, he growled in a dangerously low tone. Don't you ever think of touching her, you dirty old man. Out of the corner of his eye, Sasuke noted Tsunade's raised eyebrow. He felt a little startled at his reflex reaction himself, but he wouldn't apologize for it. That dirty old pervert. It was no secret that both the Sannin were not fond of the Uchiha, to put it lightly. Tsunade tolerated him a little more than Jiraiya did, because she was in constant contact with him, and appreciated his effectiveness and efficiency at work. She was handing over more and more work to him, as her desire to be Hokage, fueled by Naruto's presence, had all but died when the younger blonde disappeared. She didn't like the idea of the Uchiha as Hokage. She had practically promised the position to the blonde idiot, but she couldn't bring herself to care anymore. Sasuke knew. She did care enough to underhandedly keep her adopted brother, or rather, sister, out of the missing nin lists and bingo book. But when it came to the affairs of the village, she couldn't care less. Many times she'd grumble and berate Naruto in front of everyone. How dare he disappear without telling anyone? That idiot. Leaving her with a big headache because of this stupid stunt. What the heck had he been thinking? Did he even think in the first place? She'd give him a good whack when she got her hands on him. Then she'd shove her work aside and disappear for hours on end, and Sasuke would give her some time. Then dispatch Shizune to pull her out of the bars and sake houses and help her home. Drunk off her ass and weeping about the loss of her adopted brother. Why did he leave? Didn't he trust them? Didn't he know they cared? She cared? Why did he leave? Jiraiya detached himself from the wall. A little painfully. Sasuke noted with malicious satisfaction. The Toad Sannin turned to the Rokudame. It's nice to see you care, Uchiha. Especially after you all but kicked Naruto out of the village yourself. Jiraiya sneered, his voice practically dripping with sarcasm and contempt. Sasuke tried hard not to flinch, but he did. He hated those words, mainly because they were nothing but the truth. 5 years ago, Sasuke opened his eyes blearily and struggled to focus. There was a gasp and immediate movement to his left. "Oh bacon! Sakura-chan! Sasuke's awake!" An annoying voice yelled loudly. The yellow and orange blur at the side of his field of vision started getting larger before he got a blob of yellow and tan and bright, intense blue in his face. "Sasuke!" the blob said loudly, shaking his shoulder a little. Sasuke tried to clear his throat but lacked the energy. So a low, growling noise was heard instead. The blob went "oh!" and removed itself from his face before something smooth and cool was pressed to his lips, and he felt his lips wet. Water. Sasuke hurriedly gulped in as much as he could, feeling the cool water soothe his parched throat and ease his pounding head. Loud, clipped footsteps sounded. "Sasuke-kun." This time a pink blob attached itself to his right. "You're all right." He glared weakly at the pink blob, then turned his head to the front to look at the biggest blob. Tsunade chased the other two out of the room and interrogated him lightly, to which he relied grudgingly. Then she warned him about some things and left. After she left, the orange blob came bouncing back in. "I dragged you back, Sasuke, just as I said I would," Naruto said loudly. Sasuke glared at the ninja and squeezed his eyes shut. When he opened them again, he found he could see better. His eyes zoomed in his former teammate's face, and he glared, his eyes practically blazing with hatred. "You'll stay in Konoha now, won't you? You've already killed Orochimaru, so there's no need for you to stay out there. We'll help you kill Itachi, Sakura and Sai and me." "I'm not staying," Sasuke rasped contemptuously. Naruto's eyes widened in surprise. "But why? I told you, we'll all help you with Itachi, and you can't leave." Tsunade Bacon said, "You're being detained." Sasuke's fists trembled in anger. "Shut up, Dobe," he growled dangerously. "The business between me and Itachi has nothing to do with you, or Sakura, or the rest of Konoha. As soon as I can, I'm leaving, and none of you can stop me." Naruto got angry. "I just dragged you back, team. Don't think I'll let you go so easily." Sasuke narrowed his eyes and sneered. "What makes you think you can stop me? You're Kyuubi." Naruto flinched and scowled. "Kyuubi or not, I won't let you leave again, Sasuke. So many of us risked so much to bring you back. No, I'm not letting you go again." Sasuke snorted. "We'll see." Naruto was in his hospital room almost every waking hour, it seemed, and it was driving Sasuke crazy. "Shut up!" he finally shouted when he couldn't stand it anymore. He turned from where he was trying to ignite the ceiling with his glare and started to try to ignite his surprised visitor. "Shut up, Dobe. Every time you come in here you talk about how I cannot leave, and I'm sick of it. Just shut up. Accept the fact that I don't need your help, that I don't care about you or Konoha, and get out of my face, my room and my life." His voice was cold and full of suppressed fury. Naruto kept quiet for a few moments, looking down. Blonde hair covered blue eyes, and when he spoke, his voice was unusually subdued, with an odd tone to it. "What will it take for you to stay?" he asked quietly. Sasuke, frustrated and pissed off beyond belief, turned directly to the blonde, and hissed, "You leaving?" To the brunette's surprise, Naruto left silently. He stopped at the door, turned back to look at Sasuke without saying a word, then left. For a few days after that, Sasuke didn't see the loud blonde, though each time the Hokage came in to check on him, she looked more and more distracted. She and Sakura were the only ones to visit him. He could sense a constant pair of presences just outside the door. Guards, he guessed. Most likely ANBU. It was disconcerting for Sasuke to find that after his noisy perpetual visitor, the silence was lonely. He stared at the ceiling, feeling angry and confused. It was almost as if he missed the idiot. But it couldn't be. Granted, he had thought of the idiot once or twice during the past nearly 3 years, but he certainly didn't miss him. It couldn't be possible that he'd miss him after a few days of quiet after suffering through that annoying, endless chatter, right? He growled low in his throat and clenched his fists, feeling frustrated at his slow healing rate. Even with the power of the white snake, it seemed that whatever Naruto did to him was healing slower than usual. Suddenly, the door burst open, and a harried and worried-looking Hokage swept in. "Has he been here, Uchiha?" she demanded. Sasuke regarded her with a blank face. "Answer me," she growled, grabbing the collar of his hospital-issue yukata roughly. "Who? Naruto. Has he been here? Or not?" she shouted, shaking her fist, and consequently his clothes. Her eyes were blazing into his, and her killing intent flooded the room. Sasuke managed a weak sneer. "No, I haven't seen the idiot in a few days." Tsunade's anger cooled down, only to be replaced by intense worry. She mumbled almost to herself, "Where could that idiot be? I've not sent him on any missions. No one has seen him, not even the Ichiraku cook." The memory of what he had told Naruto in his anger came back to him, and a bit of uncharacteristic panic started to creep in. Unfortunately for him, Tsunade noticed the faint change in his expression and rounded on him, grabbing his collar again. "What did you say to him, Uchiha?" she shouted, shaking him. Sasuke managed an indifferent facade, although he was beginning to worry the slightest. Had the dobe really left the village? With Akatsuki and Itachi after him? "I told him I'd stay if he left," he answered tonelessly. The Hokage's eyes widened, as did her mouth. Then her eyes narrowed, and she punched Sasuke right in the jaw. He had seen it coming, but didn't avoid, or even flinch. If anything happens to him, she was so shaking with rage that she couldn't even finish her sentences. But the murderous look in her eyes clearly told Sasuke what she meant. With a frustrated growl, she hurried out of the room. Days passed without good news. The Hokage had sent out as many teams as Konoha could afford, but none managed to track him down. The Kazekage himself, Sasuke was told, had to be physically prevented from going out of his village to search for the blonde once Suna received the news. When Sasuke learned that Gaara was the Kazekage, he wondered how the Sunanin actually managed to keep their leader in the village without ending up in sand coffins. Most of all, though, he wondered how that idiot of a ninja managed to escape the detection of 2 shinobi villages. Sakura had given him a punch across the jaw as well when she came back from the first fruitless search mission. She had shouted at him, almost breaking down in tears. Sasuke ignored her, but inside he couldn't quash the guilt that was building up slowly. Their peer shinobi all regarded him with cold eyes and blatant hatred, even not that he cared about that though. The other shinobi, and the general residents of Konoha, however, seemed to rejoice at his return, thinking that he was going to settle down and rebuild the Uchiha clan. Days turned into months and years without news of the blonde idiot. Sasuke rose in rank pretty quickly through the influence of the council, much to the dissatisfaction of the rookie 9, well 7, since Naruto was gone and Sasuke didn't consider himself a part of them. His replacement and the older team that had taken the first Chunin exams with them. Then came his appointment as Rokudaime Hokage, which they, and Sasuke himself, had protested fervently against. But certain threats prevailed, and Sasuke very reluctantly took up the post. About 6 months after Naruto's disappearance, Sakura began to warm up to him again, though she wasn't as friendly as before. "Because Naruto would hate it if we treated you the same way he'd been treated all his life," she had said. Sasuke didn't care. He kept to himself as much as possible and looked out for any news or clues of the blonde whenever he was out of the village on missions, as he suspected Naruto's other friends did, though no one, not even Jiraiya, whose toads refused to reveal anything, ever saw any trace of Naruto. Not until 5 years later, when Sasuke caught that blonde-haired, blue-eyed Akatsuki member in the Hokage's library. "And that's the situation," Tsunade concluded with a sigh. She'd just spent about 20 minutes briefing Hitaki Kakashi and Yumino Irika on what had happened 2 nights ago. It goes without saying that this is extremely confidential, and no word of it should go back to the council. Sasuke, standing at his usual position to Tsunade's right, observed the 2 men. Irika looked like he was having a hard time understanding and accepting all this. His eyes shone with confusion, incredulity, and most of all, hope. Irika had been quite badly affected when Naruto was discovered to be missing, and it was no surprise that he was overjoyed to know that his practically adopted son, or should it be daughter, now was alive and kicking. Sasuke discreetly turned his eye to the silver-haired jounin. whom he knew Tsunade had actually intended on appointing as Rokadame. Kakashi's face, or rather, the visible patch of his face, was placid, but Sasuke knew the Jounin well enough to see that he is tense, alert, and his eye was flickering with a flurry of emotions. Tsunade waved a hand at them. "All right, I know you need some time to digest this," she said and added under her breath, "I needed a lot of sake myself," then continued in a normal tone. Dismiss dash. The office door opened with a bang, then shut immediately with another bang, cutting off Tsunade's voice. The three male nin immediately sprung into defensive positions with kunai pulled out. Sasuke's Sharingan activated, and right away he detected the perpetrator of the door bangs. He relaxed, but only fractionally, and turned to give a slight nod to the Hokage, who instantly caught his drift. Before she could say anything, however, a puff of smoke appeared in the room, and an ANBU squad Taicho along with it. He dropped to one knee. "Hokage-sama," the ANBU said quickly. "Reported sighting of an Akatsuki member headed this way. ANBU 3 is in active pursuit, and ANBU 9 and 11 are being mobilized as we speak." Sasuke resisted the urge to snort. "I see. Pursue the man and capture him unharmed. Unharmed, you hear? Bring him to me the moment he is apprehended," Tsunade ordered. Sasuke noticed Kakashi's raised eyebrow and Irika's mouth opening to talk. "Dismissed," he said in a clipped tone. The ANBU rose to his feet, bowed quickly and disappeared. "Hokage-sama," Irika started, and his mouth hung open as he tried to think of what to say. Tsunade rubbed her temples. "Perhaps you would like to come down, Naruto?" Kakashi asked nonchalantly, but the absence of his usual fixture, i.e. Ika Paradise, was an indicator of how seriously he was taking the situation. With a cheerful laugh, a figure materialized on the ceiling above the door and dropped to its feet on the floor. It raised its blonde head and observed the nins in the room with cerulean blue eyes. "My genjutsu still sucks," Naruto commented with a slight sheepish grin. "Eh," Kakashi agreed, still tense. Irika, on the other hand, stared open-mouthed at Naruto's feminine face. Her figure was still well hidden under the Akatsuki cloak. "And Naruto?" Irika asked hesitantly, as if he was not sure if he could believe his eyes. The cerulean blue eyes turned to rest on the brown-haired man. "Hey Irika-sensei," Naruto greeted with a small wave of the sleeve of her cloak, since it was large enough to cover her hands. "Naruto." Irika's eyes were shining with tears. Before Kakashi could stop him, he rushed forward and hugged Naruto tightly, exclaiming, "Idiot! Everyone was so worried about you." To everyone's intense shock, before Irika could get even less than half the sentence out, Naruto had screamed, utter fear and terror on her face, and pushed wildly out of Irika's embrace. It was obvious her movements were panicked. Irika dropped his arms in surprise as Naruto stumbled backwards, her arms flailing in front of her, as if to ward off further touch. In a flash, she had attached herself to the ceiling and was crouching upside down, trembling violently with her arms around herself. Tsunade had half risen from her seat at Naruto's scream, and Kakashi had taken a step forward, probably his teacher's instincts kicking in. Sasuke himself had also taken a step forward, eyes a little wide at the trembling figure. At a nod from Tsunade, he shunshined to just outside the office, and sure enough, a small group of people came running. "Rokadame-sama, Uchiha-sama, what happened? Is everything all right?" Sasuke turned to them with an expressionless face. "Tsunade-sama just received a few IOUs," he informed them in a monotone. Most of the faces became relieved, with a few chuckles and eye rolls. However, one brave soul furrowed its brows. But it sounded like someone who was terrified. Sasuke took note of the person's face, mildly approving the person's boldness in questioning his superior's obviously suspect answer. Sasuke saved the mental image for later and decided to get rid of the group. With one faintly narrowed eye, he asked in an icy tone, "Are you questioning me?" The group, scared and flustered, quickly retreated, dragging the shinobi who had opened his mouth earlier, and now seemed to have more questions. Sasuke smirked inwardly as he dispassionately watched them walk, run, away, then quickly shunshined back to his spot next to the Hokage's chair. Naruto was still crouched upside down on the ceiling, although her trembling had lessened. Irika and Tsunade were standing directly under her, apparently trying to get her to come down. "Naruto? I'm sorry. Did I hurt you?" Irika asked worriedly. The blonde head shook to indicate no, and her hair fell out of the cloak. "It was long?" Sasuke guessed it would reach the woman's mid-back, and was tied with a red band halfway down. "Come down, Naruto," Tsunade commanded gently. "We won't hurt you." Naruto managed a weak snort, and Tsunade glared at her. "I mean it, brat. Now get down." Blue eyes opened to peer at Tsunade and Irika cautiously. Then she crept backward a little before falling to the floor to land on her feet. Immediately she moved a little further away from them and wrapped her arms around herself. Sasuke saw Tsunade stiffen. "You're half-phobic, aren't you?" Tsunade asked slowly. It was the younger blonde's turn to stiffen. "What?" asked Irika. It was Kakashi who answered. "Haptophobia or haptophobia. Fear of being touched." Naruto nodded slowly. "Yeah, that's what Itachi-Nizan said. But I'm much better, really." Sasuke froze where he was. "Itachi? Itachi-Nizan?" Naruto was still rambling. "A few years ago, I couldn't have anyone even near me. Now I can be near people and I can stand body contact during fights, although not too much, but I can't have too much contact like pats or hugs and stuff, although I've been forcing myself to start touching other people and let them touching me without me screaming dash." She stopped abruptly when she realized Sasuke was in the room, and a look of shame and anger crossed her previously blank eyes before they turned away from his eyes. "Naruto," Irika's voice was sad. "I'm really sorry about earlier." The woman gave him a faintly cheerful grin, although her face was still tense. "Don't apologize, Irika-sensei. You didn't know. What caused your haptophobia, Naruto?" Tsunade probed gently. The woman addressed stiffened. "The attempted extraction," she answered shortly, not meeting anyone's eyes. Irika paled a little. Sasuke himself felt a slight mental shudder, recalling what little the woman had told them of the incident during their previous encounter. "Look, I don't want your pity," Naruto ground out after a few moments. Her voice was cold and uncaring, the polar opposite of the Naruto Sasuke knew. "I didn't come here to squeeze a few tears out of you." "Then why are you here?" the Godame questioned warily. Naruto or not, the woman was still Akatsuki. The Akatsuki member huffed and flicked her wrist as she raised her hand. 2 photographs appeared between her fingers and the large sleeve of her cloak slid down her hand. Sasuke noted she was wearing black gloves with silver-hued metal guard plates on the back of her hand, and black fishnet extended from inside the sleeve and ended in an orange hem that was equidistant from elbow to wrist. The brunette saw that one picture was that of a smiling blonde man, and the other of a red-haired woman who was grinning widely at the camera. He blinked once. The blonde man resembled Naruto in terms of their coloring, blonde hair, and blue eyes, and the redhead's features and cheerful expression could definitely be seen in Naruto's own features. Kakashi stiffened, as did the Godame. "Minato-sensei," the Jounin murmured. Tsunade exhaled loudly. "Namikaze Minato and Uzumaki Kushina," she said, mainly for Irika's and Sasuke's benefit. Sasuke had already recognized the blonde man as the yandame from the picture on the wall. "Oh," was all Irika said. Naruto flicked her wrist again. The photos disappeared and she lowered her hand back to her side. "They're mine by right," she said, her eyes daring them to deny it. Tsunade grimaced. "No, Gaki, they're not. Technically, you forfeited all your rights when you became a missing nin." Naruto's eyes flashed angrily. "I don't care. They're all I have. Or would you rather I ransack the library and take my Otusan's journals and jutsu scrolls?" she asked, baring her teeth at them in a feral manner. Then she grinned. "Besides, I know for a fact that I'm not listed in the bingo book." Tsunade folded her arms and glared at her. But Sasuke knew that the older blonde wouldn't deny Naruto the photos. "Come back to Konoha and your parents' effects will be yours." Sasuke spoke up suddenly. His usual cool, uncaring voice hid the plea behind the statement. The Akatsuki woman turned to stare at him incredulously for a long moment, and Sasuke stared right back with his expressionless face, a little mesmerized by the shade of blue of her eyes. He found that he rather missed seeing it. Then she laughed, loudly, uproariously until she was clutching her middle and wiping tears from her eyes. "Ah ha 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 ha." Her body shook, this time from laughter, not fear. Sasuke glared. "Glad to know you're entertained," he said sarcastically, coldly. "But it's funny, don't you see?" she asked, pushing back her hair out of her eyes to look at the 3 older nin, who looked blankly back at her. She smacked her own forehead. "Man, and you say I'm slow, don't you see? It's a role reversal. 5 years ago it was me begging Sasuke to come back and stay in Konoha, and now he's the one doing it. Don't you find it funny?" She received deadpan looks, and sighed, shaking her head. "Come back to Konoha, dobe," Sasuke said again. Naruto looked at him, her eyes bright but guarded. She chuckled amusedly, then stared at the ceiling while stroking her chin, making a show of being in deep thought, saying, Now what was it you said the numerous times I begged you to come back? Oh, that's right. She abandoned the pretense to stare coldly at Sasuke, and declared flatly, No, weren't you the one who said you'd stay if I left, all those years ago? And now you're asking me to stay. Sasuke winced almost imperceptibly, but the Akatsuki woman saw it and sneered at him. Naruto. Irika's voice was sad and pleading. The woman's features softened as she turned to her former father figure. I'm sorry, Irika-sensei, she said in a gentler tone, with what seemed to be genuine regret. But I can't come back right now. Can't? Right now? Sasuke narrowed his eyes at Naruto, who wasn't looking at him. Naruto, at least consider carefully what Sasuke is saying, Kakashi advised, his eye serious. As Godame and Rokudame, we have the authority to pardon you, Tsunade pleaded. Her eyes were suspiciously bright. Naruto's features soured for a moment at the mention of Rokudame, and Sasuke flinched internally. The younger blonde shook her head regretfully. Sorry, no can do. She ran a hand through her bangs. I'm really sorry, Tsunade Obacon, Kakashi-sensei. She stepped slowly towards Irika and reached out a trembling hand and grasped Irika's arm very slowly, hesitantly, and quickly let go. I'm sorry, Irika-sensei. Just forget about me, Minasan. With that, she disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto. Irika's and Tsunade's voices were anguished. Kakashi slumped dejectedly. Sasuke cursed. Sasuke slipped his hands into his pockets and started towards his apartment, keeping his head down and ignoring the people around him. There weren't many people about since it was rather late in the night. The brunette found his thoughts straying towards his ex-teammate and current Akatsuki member. He realized that in the approximately 3 weeks since he had last seen her, he had found himself thinking of her during his freer moments, wondering how she was, what she had gone through, what it was like in the Akatsuki, thinking about how different she now was personality-wise. Cold and uncaring, so unlike the cheerful, happy-go-lucky idiot his teammate had been. Of course, the fact that he was now a she, and had apparently been a she all her life, took a lot to get used to. There was also that Itachi-Nizan thing. Sasuke scowled darkly. Reaching the door to his apartment, he undid his traps and security seals and opened the door. As soon as he put one foot in, he sensed another presence in his apartment. Red bled into black as Sharingan activated, and he noiselessly closed the door and unsheathed his Kusanagi, and made his way towards the source of the chakra signature. The chakra signature seemed to emanate from his bathroom, and was very faint. Sasuke suspected it was the signature of an experienced shinobi who was too used to hiding their chakra that they did it subconsciously all the time, though it seemed this person wasn't bothered to completely hide it, meaning that the shinobi wasn't hiding. Still, Sasuke had to raise an eyebrow as he padded quickly to his bathroom. What on earth would the unknown shinobi want in his bathroom? As he stood outside the door, he could hear the person inside moving about and muttering to themselves every now and then. Without warning, he threw open the door and held his chikudo in an attacking position. A loud curse sounded and his fractionally widened eyes took in the rather shapely figure of a blonde woman wearing an orange tank top over a mesh shirt that had orange hems at mid-neck and halfway down to the wrist. She also had on the usual shinobi pants in black that were tucked into ninja boots that almost reached her knees. A black cloak with red cloud designs was tossed haphazardly on the floor. Blue eyes looked up at Sasuke. Hey, Sasuke? Naruto said carelessly, but it was obvious she was tense and ready to disappear at any moment. He noted with a faint sense of alarm and concern that she was cut up and bleeding. What are you doing here? He asked icily, not letting go of the Kusanagi. He also realized, with a faint, uncharacteristic blush, that he kept surreptitiously eyeing her figure, as if to make sure that his eyes were not deceiving him. Like what you see? The woman drawled dryly, and apparently did not notice how Sasuke's blush intensified a fraction as she bent down to pick up her Akatsuki cloak, hissing in pain as she did so. She straightened, clutching the cloak in one hand, and turned to face him. Me, Itachi-Nizan, and Jaws were on a mission nearby. I slipped up, got myself cut up. 2 guys escaped. Jaws lectured me for an hour, Itachi-Nizan for 10 minutes. Then they left to report to Leader Sama. Since Konoha was nearby, I decided to drop in to say hi, and steal some bandages and ointment and stuff. She stared warily at him. Then, in a flash, started to form the hand seals for Shunshin no Jutsu. But before she could finish, Sasuke had the tip of his Kusanagi resting on her chest, breast. Inner Sasuke noted with a blush. where her heart was, ready to be pushed in. He wasn't about to be caught off guard this time. Two blue eyes narrowed at him icily. "What do you want now, team?" Her voice was frosty. Sasuke considered her for a moment. With just a simple molding of chakra, he could kill her with a Chidori Nagashi, or at least knock her unconscious and deliver her to Marino Ibiki. But without even stopping to consider the consequences. Not that he could be bothered about them. He knew he could not kill her or even turn her in. "Continue what you were doing," he finally said, and lowered his chikudo, although he didn't resheath it. Naruto looked at him in surprise. "Huh?" Sasuke glanced at her with a trace of annoyance. A reflex action more than anything. "I said, continue what you were doing." Naruto raised her eyebrows and opened her mouth to say something, but apparently thought the better of it and slowly backed to where the bathroom supply shelf was. She bit back a wince as she rifled through it, keeping watch on Sasuke out of the corner of her eye. After a few moments of watching her fumble and mess up his things, he strode over with an annoyed huff. Naruto's eyes widened in alarm, and she took a large step back and slipped into a defensive stance. A part of Sasuke twinged with sadness to see the formerly fearless blonde so fearful. "Relax, Baka. I'm just getting the things you need." Typical moron. Can't even steal properly. "How'd you ever make Akatsuki is beyond me," he said, his tone a little condescending. He grabbed the bandages and ointment that had been at the very back of the shelf, turned to the blonde and tossed them to her. Just as he turned, he caught sight of an emotion on her face and in her eyes before it disappeared and her eyes became blank again. Was she hurt by what I said? Before Sasuke could dwell further on it, Naruto had dropped her cloak to catch the flying objects. "I'm a Bakemono," she said easily and shrugged, but turned her blue gaze away from Sasuke. "That's all the qualification I need." Foot in mouth. Sasuke's innards twisted uncomfortably. "HN," he grunted, and backed away to stand in front of the door. After a few seconds of strained silence, Naruto turned to pointedly look at him. "Well, aren't you getting out? I need some privacy, team," she snapped. Sasuke's face remained passive. "No, you might try to escape." Naruto groaned exasperatedly. "Like I couldn't escape if you're here. Look, do you really expect me to undress in front of you?" A faint pink tinged Sasuke's cheeks, but his face told Naruto the answer. He was obviously not budging. The woman narrowed her eyes and glared at him. "Pervert!" she shouted. "Arg, fine. But if I catch you peeking, I'll feed you to Kisame's sharks." Hissing in pain, she turned her back to him, sat on the covered toilet seat, and slowly started tugging her orange tank top over her head, wincing and hissing as the dried blood pulled painfully where it had stuck to the mesh shirt and skin. Sasuke watched, mesmerized by the impromptu, involuntary strip show. He swallowed heavily as she started pulling the mesh shirt over her head. She had to go slowly because of the pain, and to Sasuke it seemed almost seductive. With the mesh out of the way, some blood-stained wrappings that were around her upper chest loosened and fell off. Sasuke swallowed again, realizing that those had been her chest wrappings that she wore in lieu of a bra. Then he frowned and resisted a shiver as he saw what had happened to the right side of her back. Her chest wrappings had fallen off because they had been partially shredded. Now Sasuke could see that the skin and some flesh of the right side of her back had been badly shredded, too. The skin and flesh were quite mangled, and it was not a sight for weak stomachs. Naruto tore off her gloves and threw them down to join her clothes, then reached a hand around to palpate the injury, hissing in pain as she did so. Some parts of the wound had started to bleed again, and, feeling the slickness of blood on her fingers, she withdrew them and cursed under her breath. "It doesn't slice. It shaves," she muttered mockingly, as if imitating someone, then grumbled, "Stupid sword. Stupid jaws. Why can't he use a clean-edged, flat blade like everyone else? Stupid shaving sharkskin. Wait until I get my hands on you, Kisameru. Then I'll shave your stupid fins and make shark fin soup. Then you'll know what it's like to be shaved, you stupid shark man." Naruto had been cleaning her other smaller, less urgent wounds while she unloaded her grief. Done with that, she massaged her forehead with one hand. "How the heck am I supposed to wrap myself? Stupid shark. Stupid huge-ass sword. I'll wrap your back for you?" Sasuke spoke up suddenly, surprising both himself and Naruto, who jumped and almost turned around. "Damn it, Sasuke. I almost forgot you're still around," she said, then quickly shook her head. "No, I can do this on my own. Don't come near me." Naruto's haphophobia had probably kicked in, and Sasuke felt uncharacteristically disappointed and sad at Naruto's refusal of his help. "HN, just hurry up and don't bleed all over my floor. Use your tanki," he said instead. Naruto's answer was to growl back a little. Sasuke could see wisps of red chakra moving on her wound even without his Sharingan. The wound was healing, but it would be at least half a day or more before it was fully healed, and putting ointment on it and covering it up was probably the best thing that could be done right now. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. While Sasuke had been staring at the wound and red chakra, Naruto had created a clone. Just before the smoke completely disappeared, Sasuke noticed the Kage Bunshin was as undressed as the original, and nearly had a nosebleed. He was surprised at his reaction. He'd seen women, some prettier than the one currently in front of him, in various states of undress. Some had been injured teammates. Others were females who tried to throw themselves at him. None had turned him on before this, though. To his mild disappointment, he surprised himself by feeling disappointed, and inner Sasuke blushed when he realized what the disappointment meant. The Kage Bunshin quickly picked up the discarded Akatsuki cloak and threw it on before Sasuke could see anything. Then the Kage Bunshin started to attend to the unusual wound on Naruto's back, washing away the fresh and dried blood, spreading the ointment, and finally putting a layer of gauze before wrapping the wound by binding the bandage around her torso. It helped Naruto put on the bloodied and somewhat shredded mesh shirt and tank top before dispelling. The cloak it had been wearing collapsed to the floor as the material body disintegrated. Naruto bent painfully to pick up the cloak, then straightened and turned to Sasuke. She stared at him for a few seconds, her eyes guarded and her expression not giving away anything. Sasuke stared back, taking in Naruto's feminine features. "Thanks, Sasuke," the woman said finally. "HN." Naruto started to walk towards the door. Sasuke could see that she was biting her cheek, probably due to the pain caused by the chafing of her clothes on the newly bandaged wound. He followed her out the bathroom door towards the living room and realized she was heading for the front door. A feeling of panic flashed through him, and he quickly placed himself between Naruto and the front door. As he stared at Naruto's raised eyebrows, he wondered at the feeling of panic a few seconds ago. He knew that if he were to let the blonde go now, he'd probably never see her again, and the guilt that had plagued him all these 5 years would never be assuaged. But he was surprised that he had panicked about it. Cold, uncaring Sasuke panicked that the dobe would leave again? "What do you want now, team?" Naruto asked warily. She had started to tense, and he could sense that she was gathering her chakra. He gave himself a mental shake. "Where do you think you're going?" he asked in the most uncaring voice he could muster. Naruto scowled lightly at him. "Air out," she said dryly, rolling her eyes. She moved to step forward. "Thanks for your bandages and stuff. Really appreciate it. Gotta get going now. Missing mean stuff to do." Sasuke stared back expressionlessly, not moving an inch. Naruto retracted her foot and her scowl deepened. "Hey, I'm trying to get out of your house and life here. A little cooperation, please?" Sasuke stared a second longer. "Stay." The blonde's eyes widened incredulously. Then she sneered. "Nanny? You were more than glad to get rid of me 5 years ago, and now you ask me to stay." Sasuke tried his best to keep any concern for Naruto out of his voice. "Stay. At least the night. You need to rest your back, and think about coming back to Konoha." Naruto was taken aback for a second, a look of surprise on her face. Then she sneered again. "Is that concern I detect in your tone, Uchiha?" she said sarcastically. "Don't start pretending to care, or people might think you've actually grown a heart." She took a step forward, but was forced to take another backward when Sasuke didn't move. She raised an eyebrow when he didn't have a comeback for her jibe. "Stay," Sasuke said a third time, tone betraying nothing. "Then at least you can fight me to get out if you really want to." He raised a mental eyebrow when he saw Naruto flinch a little at his words, but otherwise said nothing. They ended up standing there, staring down each other for almost 15 minutes before Naruto gave in and huffed. She scowled at Sasuke, who was sighing with relief. Mentally, of course. "Fine. You win this time. Now what?" she snapped irritably. Sasuke pointed behind her. "My room." Naruto's blue eyes widened. "Nanny?" she screeched, backing away with her arms flailing. Before she winced because of the pain the movement caused and dropped her arms. Sasuke rolled his eyes at her. Although he had a faint tint of pink on his face, he hoped she couldn't see in the dark. He hadn't quite realized the implications of the 2 words his mouth had shot off before his brain could stop it. "Baka." You need a larger space than the couch to lie on since your back is injured. You can lie on the bed. Naruto glared at him. With you in it? You pervert Yuru. Just because I'm now female doesn't mean I'm too weak to kick your ass, you dash. Sasuke glared back and cut her off. Like I would want to be in the same bed as you, Yuzuritanki. I'll be on the floor. Naruto's glare remained, but she seemed to be considering. Fine. She drew back to allow Sasuke to lead the way. He stepped towards his bedroom, and his stomach twisted uncomfortably to see her shrink back when he passed by. Don't even think of disappearing, Baka, he warned, and opened his bedroom door. He stood aside and gestured for her to get in, which she did slowly while watching him warily. As soon as she was in, he locked the door and sealed the room, and turned to see her seated on his bed, watching him bemusedly. His heart skipped a beat, then decided to pump faster than usual when he saw her seated on his bed. Naruto on his bed. He gave himself a mental slap, then turned to his cupboard and pulled out a shirt. He tossed it at her. Ha! Sasuke made himself as comfortable as possible sitting with his back to the door so he could face her. Your clothes are ripped, and so is your cloak. Naruto shook her head, then lowered herself onto her stomach carefully. It's all right, I've slept in worse. She dropped his shirt onto the floor by the bed. Sasuke watched as she struggled to keep awake, but her eyelids drooped, and soon she was fast asleep. He found he liked watching her face in sleep. It was more peaceful, but once in a while her brows would furrow and her mouth would crease into a frown. His fingers itched to smooth the creases on her forehead, to rake through her bangs, and to whack her a good one on the head for leaving the village. For playing the hypocrite, for making him bear all the guilt for her disappearance for 5 years, for dragging him back then disappearing on him. He was disconcerted to find he also wanted to give her a tight hug, to make her haphophobia go away. Sasuke awoke the next morning to find the blonde missing. The rumpled bed and a kunai stuck in his wall, bearing a scrap of paper saying thank you, was all the evidence she had even been there. He cursed. Do you think she will ever come back? Sakura's voice wasn't too hopeful. She was careful to keep her voice down. Sasuke swallowed the bit of ramen in his mouth and shrugged. Beside him, Sakura gripped her chopsticks so hard they cracked. She grinned sheepishly and broke apart a new pair. When she, corrected Sasuke. She comes back. I'm gonna pound her into a bloody pulp, with all her speeches about brining you back and protecting her precious people. She just ups and leaves. Sakura pounded the countertop angrily, then deflated. It's kinda hard to get used to the idea that Naruto's a girl, she mused. And I can't believe I had to be on a mission the both times she appeared in Konoha. The medic Nin sighed. But why did she leave in the first place? You telling Naruto to leave isn't a good enough excuse. The Naruto we know is way more stubborn than that. Sasuke shrugged. Naruto had never mentioned it. Not the time he caught her in the library. Not the time she burst into the Hokage's office. And not 2 months ago when he found her in his bathroom. Images. Memories of a topless Naruto in his bathroom and Naruto sleeping on his bed flitted through his mind. And he quickly raised his bowl to drain the soup, hoping Sakura didn't see the pink tinge of his cheeks. It was shameful, the way he always blushed when it came to matters concerning Naruto. Was he turning into a pervert? He found himself thinking of her often, reliving those few recent memories of her. He also reminisced and brooded about the time they were Team 7. The flap behind them rustled. Sakura? Are you done? The pink-haired medic Nin looked up to see the white eyes and dark brown hair. She smiled fondly at her fiancé. Almost Niji. Give me a second. Niji sat regally on the seat next to Sakura and nodded to Sasuke. Uchiha. He never called Sasuke by his given name. Never called him by his position's title outside of duty. Hyuga. Sasuke nodded back. Since Sakura had started dating Hyuga almost 3 years back, she had more or less forced them to tolerate each other. At first, the Hyuga would start a fight, verbal or physical, with Sasuke almost every time they met. It was obvious he blamed Sasuke for Naruto's disappearance. Sakura's fists and pleas, her fists worked best, in Sasuke's opinion, had caused the animosity to die down to the minimal levels. Done, Sakura announced, and with a light pat to her ex-teammate's back, left the ramen stand with her fiancé. Sasuke was relieved that she had gotten over her crush. He slipped some money onto the counter, put his hands into his pocket and strode quietly out of the stand. It was evening, and the sun was in the process of setting. Most people he came across greeted him almost reverently, but he mostly ignored them. He opened his apartment door, walked in and tensed. There was that faint presence again. This time he easily recognized it as Naruto's, but he didn't let his guard down. He calmly closed and locked his door, and made his way to the kitchen, from which he could hear sound of cupboards and drawers being opened and closed. Sasuke rolled his eyes. The baka had never been good at stealth, and evidently would never be good at it. That's not true. A voice of logic spoke up in his head. If her stealth sucked, there's no way she could have sneaked into the village and into your house without being detected. Funny how it was so easy to think of Naruto as a female now. Sasuke! Came a loud, annoying whine from the kitchen. Why isn't there any food in your house? Sasuke rolled his eyes again and strode into the kitchen to find the blonde woman rummaging through his cupboards with a petulant look that he could see once she turned to him and crossed her arms over her chest. He nodded at her. I see you got yourself a new cloak, he commented causally, but he was still on guard. She was Akatsuki after all. She uncrossed her arms and picked at the cuffs of her long, wide cloak sleeves. This? Yeah. Pain whipped it up for me from his secret stash or something. After he chewed me up and stared me down about my blunder, as he put it. She shifted somewhat uncomfortably and stared at him, and he stared back at those blank, once lively blue eyes. So, anything to eat around here? I'm starved. Sasuke nearly chuckled at the childish way Naruto had asked the question. He waved her to one of the dining chairs that were pushed neatly under the dining table, exactly the way they had been since they had first been put into his kitchen. They stayed that way mainly because he only used one of them and very sparingly at that. Naruto looked at him cautiously, obviously thinking it over before sitting down. She leaned the chair onto its back legs so that the back of the chair was touching the counter behind it, then looked up at him expectantly. He quirked up the corner of his mouth at her exasperatedly. Don't even think of attacking me, he said, and turned his back to her to open the fridge. She snorted. Why, don't think you can win? She asked, an obvious challenging grin in her voice. Nope, he answered. I know you'd want me head-on if we ever had to fight. You were never a sneak attack person. He closed the fridge door, turned around and held out a palm. Time changes people, Sasuke, she said in a guarded voice as she rocked on the two legs on the chair, then turned to look at the object in his hand. She scrunched up her face. Yuck, I don't understand how you could just eat those, she whined, but took the tomato anyway, staring at it with comical disgust. Sasuke scowled at her. I happen to like them. Eat or starve, I don't care. Ah, how could you say you don't care? That hurt, bastard. Naruto fake sobbed and clutched her cloak over her heart. The brunette merely rolled his eyes, though inwardly he was glad to see her behaving more naturally. I do care, he admitted hesitantly to himself as he took a seat next to her. Naruto pouted at the tomato in her hand, screwed up her face and took a bite, making a big production of showing her distaste for the fruit. I don't like it raw, she informed him with a screwed-up face. In soups or cooked as an ingredient in dishes. Then it's all right, but eating it raw sucks. Sasuke shot her a dry look, then tensed as she suddenly leaned over, and, to his surprise, sniffed at him. Her blue eyes lit up, such a vast change from their former dead look. Ramen, she cried. I smell ramen on you, Ichiraku ramen. She leaned back into her chair, crossed her arms petulantly and pouted. Sasuke beat himself up mentally as he wondered where the sudden urge to kiss those red, pouting lips came from. Yeah, he finally answered after inner Sasuke was a bloody heap on his mental floor. She ran a hand through her long bangs that had been tucked behind her ears. They were longer than Sasuke remembered. In 2 months or so they would be long enough to tie back. The movement of her hand, which showed Sasuke the purple-black nail polish on her fingernails that seemed to be requisite of an Akatsuki member, loosened the hair so that it somewhat hid the top half of her face and the scratched Hittite. Inner Sasuke received another beating when he suggested that Sasuke tuck the yellow hair behind Naruto's ears so that he could see her eyes better. Man, I miss Ichiraku ramen, Naruto said wistfully. Maybe one day when Neji and Hinata are both out on missions and you're stuck in the tower, I'll henge and go for a bowl or 2. Or 3. You would? Sasuke commented wryly, then changed the topic, since for some reason the air had become rather sorrowful. Your haphophobia seems to be better. Naruto blinked at him and ran her hand through her long fringe again. Yeah, it's really strange. I can't touch people yet, but it's no longer terrifying to be so near someone anymore. It seemed to get better so much more quickly after I came back for the first time. She shifted so that the large collar of her cloak hid her lower face from view. What? Aren't you gonna insult me? Make fun of my weakness? Sasuke remained silent, pondering that question. When they were genin, he'd have taunted the blonde for having a weakness. He'd have rubbed it in her face. But now he didn't quite know what he felt. If he wasn't so sure he was Uchiha Sasuke, emotionless avenger, he'd think that he felt sad about her phobia, that he was commiserating with her about her weakness instead of crowing over it. When are you coming back? He asked instead. When I fin, she started to say, then cut herself off. Sasuke looked at her sharply, questioningly. She avoided his eyes and picked at her nails. I mean, why should I come back? The village is better off without the Jinchuriki everyone loves to hate. Isn't it? I can tell they're happy that they don't have to see my pretty face walking down the streets, she said sarcastically. Besides, you're the Rokudame now, and you can't leave the village, which means that I won't be coming back. What are you doing here, then? It came out a little colder than he intended. Naruto hesitated and averted her eyes a little more, her fingers playing with the half-eaten tomato. Then she looked at him and grinned. I was in the neighborhood. Just thought I'd drop by and visit my favorite, most hated rival, steal his food, that sort of thing, she replied. But you suck, dude. How can you not have food in your house? Sasuke ran a hand through his hair. This house is merely a place for me to spend the nights. Bastard, she scolded. It's such a nice place. Be a little more appreciative. I'd love to live here. It's so much better compared to my place when I was a Konoha nin. She sighed. You spoiled brat. I am not, Sasuke replied automatically. Naruto's eyes narrowed mischievously and she grinned. R2. I am not. R2. I am not. R2. R2. I am not. R2. 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 Am not. You're no fun, she said, pouting playfully at the brunette, who was smiling faintly. An unreadable expression crossed her face, and Sasuke wondered what she was thinking. You haven't given me a proper answer, Sasuke told her. Her face became blank instantly, and she sat quietly for a second before standing up and placing the bitten tomato on the table. You don't believe me, huh? I can tell when I'm not wanted. See you around, bastard. Sasuke shot out a hand, but she disappeared before he could latch onto her. He cursed out loud, glaring angrily at the tomato and wishing his legs were long enough to kick himself in the ass. Sasuke stared at the steaming cup of ramen on the table in front of him, a pair of chopsticks in his hands. It had become a routine. Whenever he came home relatively early, he'd cook himself a cup of instant ramen from the stash he now had hidden away in one of his kitchen cupboards. He remembered the looks of incredulity shot at him by some of his peer shinobi, and the knowing look Kakashi had in his eye when they caught him buying a whole carton of instant ramen cups. He still remembered the embarrassment and frustration he'd successfully tried not to show. He thought he had picked a day and time when the shinobi wouldn't be visiting the grocery store, but it seems Fate and Niji, who was there along with Sakura, Ino, Hinata, and Kiba, was mocking him. He recalled the Hyuga's contemptuously raised eyebrow and Sakura's and Hinata's incredulous looks. Sakura had questioned him, but as usual Sasuke didn't deign to answer. He sighed softly as he closed his eyes, murmured an itadikamasu, and lifted the noodles to his mouth slowly. He couldn't deny it to himself. He had bought and kept buying the instant ramen in hopes that Naruto would pop by again. Another 2 months had passed since she had taken a bite of his tomato and left, and opened the cupboard and shout in a happy tone, Ramen! Sasuke's eyes shot open. He knew he had a vivid imagination, but that was just too real to have come from his mind. Beside him, in the seat she had previously occupied, was the woman he had been thinking of. His ramen cup was already in her hands, and she was inhaling the steam with a ridiculously happy look on her face. Sasuke's pulse sped up a little, and a little fond feeling invaded his heart as he watched her smile. Upturned curves for eyes and whisker marks that curved to follow her bunched-up cheeks. Here, he said, carefully jabbing the chopsticks that held his uneaten noodles towards her. Blue eyes opened to stare at him. He jabbed the chopsticks in her direction again when she didn't move. Use these to eat, dobe. Expression fled her face and her eyes became cold and blank. I have happy phobia, bastard, she replied flatly. How do you expect me to take 'em from you? Especially if they have noodles on them. Haphophobia, baka, Sasuke corrected. He glanced at the noodles on the chopsticks, glanced at Naruto, and glanced back to the noodles before looking to Naruto again. His pulse sped up a little. Open you mouth, then, he said. Despite trying to keep his voice steady, it came out soft, gentle even. The blonde Akatsuki member stared at him incredulously. Sasuke decided he'd had enough with the incredulous looks. Hello? Happy phobia? Naruto said exasperatedly. Half-a-phobia, Sasuke corrected again. His eyes and expression softened. Trust me, he said softly, looking straight at her eyes. She started and stared back, before chuckling cynically. Trust you? She sneered. That hurt? Sasuke blurted out softly and honestly before he could stop himself. Naruto's sneer didn't leave her face. Instead, her expression became more sarcastic. Just open your mouth and trust me, Naruto. It was the first time in years that he had willingly, casually said her name out loud. The only other time he had actually said her name was when she had first reappeared. He never spoke her name to anyone, because he never broached the topic of her with anyone else. They spoke of her to him but never him to them. A flicker of surprise crossed Naruto's face, and the sarcasm slowly drained from her face to leave it expressionless. She stared into his eyes before slowly opening her mouth. Sasuke's throat went dry for some reason he couldn't fathom, and seemingly for that same reason his heart started pounding nervously as he lifted the chopsticks and carefully fed the noodles to her. He watched, entranced, as she sucked the long noodles into her mouth, licked her lips and chewed slowly. You could have cut the silence with a knife, but Sasuke knew it wasn't the usual kind of tension he had with Naruto. The I hate you, my rival kind of tension. He stared at those beautiful blue eyes that were holding something back, and watched them stare back into his own eyes. The ramen's cold, team. Naruto's complaining voice broke the moment and she looked away, down to the ramen cup. The cup's cold, too. Sasuke almost scowled at her. Make your own, then, he told her curtly, and snatched back his stolen cup of cold, instant noodles. She pouted at him as he ate the noodles, and he noticed she had trimmed her blonde fringe so that it just covered her eyes and touched her cheeks. He pointed to the cupboard that held his ramen stash with a jerk of his chopsticks, and smiled softly at the way she broke into a huge smile and scrambled noisily to throw open the cupboard and squeal happily at the sight of the stacks of ramen cups. Ramen! She was scooping out an armful of cups. Shrimp, chicken, beef, seafood, pork, miso. The blonde rushed around the kitchen, grabbing a kettle, filling it with water, setting it on the stove and opening the foil of half the cups she had pulled out with the usual Naruto-ish energy that used to annoy Sasuke years ago, but he now found himself missing. A small smile curved the corners of his lips and disappeared as soon as she turned around. He caught sight of her ecstatic grin as she bent down to pour hot water into the ramen cups, and it was hidden by the large, high collar of her cloak as she straightened. She waited impatiently for the dehydrated noodles to cook, and was fidgeting and tapping her feet and fingers, and humming snatches of tuneless melodies. Sasuke hid a fond smile at her behavior. The 3-minute wait was soon up, and she happily ripped the foil off the first cup of ramen within her reach and inhaled deeply. Ah! She moaned happily. The sound shot straight to Sasuke's groin and sent a pleasant shiver up his back. She quickly unbuttoned her cloak enough for her to eat and grabbed the pair of chopsticks she had found in one of the drawers. "Itadikamasu," she said quickly, and Sasuke almost didn't see the movement of her mouth before she was slurping up the steaming noodles with a blissful expression that made him smile. Good thing her eyes were closed into upturned curves, or she might have seen his smile. Within minutes she was done and leaned back, grinning happily with her eyes closed and a hand rubbing her stomach. "That hit the spot," she mumbled in a satisfied tone. Her voice and expression made a flush of pleasure rise in Sasuke. He liked seeing her happy, he realized, and he liked it even more when he was the one who made her happy. "You're welcome to the ramen any time," he told her, hoping to see her smile. His wish was granted. "Really?" She almost squealed, her smile nearly splitting her face in half. Sasuke was happy, more than happy to see her entire face since her cloak had been unbuttoned. You rock, Sasuke." Was it possible to feel both elated and disappointed at the same time? Sasuke's heart beat faster when he heard the word that almost came out of Naruto's mouth. Did she really mean what she had nearly said? He felt disappointed that she hadn't said it. Would you say it to her? The thought spontaneously popped into his head and made him pink slightly and scowl. Unfortunately, Naruto's happy look slid off her face at his scowl, and she stood up. "Most people actually smile when they get complimented, bastard," she told him in a somewhat snippy tone. "If you dislike it so much even when I compliment you, then I'll be going." She grinned an evil grin. "But you'd better guard your ramen properly. You'd never know when I'll just pop by and steal a few." She started the hand seals for Shunshin no Jutsu. "Bye, bast." Before she could finish the last hand seal, Sasuke's eyes had widened in alarm and he had shot out a hand to latch onto her wrist. "Don't go, Naruto." He couldn't quite keep the pleading tone out of his voice. "Let go of me, bastard," was the reply. She couldn't keep the shakiness out of her voice, and he realized she was trembling. He quickly released her wrist and shot her an apologetic look. The moment he released her, she quickly backpedaled to lean against the counter behind her, knocking down the chair in her haste. She had her arms wrapped around herself and was trembling. Her eyes were hidden by her bangs. Sasuke had never felt so guilty since the day she left the village. "Bastard," he heard her whisper. The tremor hadn't quite faded from her voice. Sorry," he finally mumbled, lowering his head a little. He saw her head rise in surprise. A long moment of silence passed before she spoke. The tremor had faded, but her voice was still low. "Just don't do that again. Not yet. Not yet." Not a little bit of relief flooded Sasuke at those words, and an unreasonable, that's what he told himself, thought popped into his head that made his face pink again. "I meant what I said," he told her, to rid himself of the thought and the blush. "You're welcome to the ramen anytime. I don't particularly like it anyway." Through her bangs, he saw a shaped yellow eyebrow rise. Her arms were still wrapped around herself, but not as tightly as before. "You don't particularly like ramen, yet you have enough to feed a genin cell for a week in your cupboards," she said in an incredulous, "I don't quite get it" tone. Sasuke didn't answer. He couldn't quite tell her that he had bought the stuff in hopes that he could see her smile when she stopped by. "Stay the night," he said instead. The other blonde eyebrow rose to join its mate near her hairline. "Uchiha Sasuke, Rokudame Hokage, are you asking a missing nin and enemy of Konoha to spend the night in your house, instead of apprehending her and handing her over to Marino Ibiki?" she asked a little mockingly. "Would you rather spend the night with Ibiki then?" He shot back, his face expressionless. Then his eyes softened. "I know you would have done the same for me if you were in my place," he continued quietly. That silenced her, and she looked at him with a blank face for a few long seconds before folding her arms and looking away. "Okay." Sasuke's heart jumped in his chest and he nearly sighed aloud with relief. Hiding a smile that threatened to show, he switched off the kitchen light and led the way to his bedroom. He had to resist the urge to turn around every few steps to make sure she was still following him. Her tread was silent, and he had to strain to hear the swishing of her cloak. He motioned to the bed as he entered the room and closed the door behind her. He didn't switch on the lights, but quickly sealed the room with a string of hand seals. Naruto, who had sat on the bed, raised an eyebrow as he slid down to sit against the door. "Still afraid I'll disappear on you?" she asked, grinning with a little contempt. Sasuke snorted. "As if I'm doing it to keep people out," he replied. "Particularly nosy, overzealous Anbiyu and a certain silver-haired, perverted former teacher of ours who likes to pop by just to get me up." Naruto's eyes widened and she shot off the bed quickly. You and Kakashi-sensei? I didn't know you swung that way. And he's too old for you." Sasuke's eyes widened to match Naruto's for a second before his features expressed the same disgust on her face. "Use your Itanki. Not like that, Baka. He just likes to annoy me. I'm straight. I like yo girls." The blonde woman was laughing uproariously at her little joke and Sasuke's reaction, and it took her a minute to calm herself down to a few chuckles. She went back to the bed and lay on her stomach, pillowing her head on one arm so she could look at him. Her other hand dangled down, fingertips tracing lazy circles on the wooden floor. She raised an eyebrow at him. "You like girls?" she asked in a pointedly questioning tone. "I would have thought you're asexual, you frigid bastard." Sasuke's heart was thumping a mile a minute at what he had accidentally let slip out. Thank Cammy she didn't notice it. "Just because I don't go around ogling girls doesn't mean I'm gay, Baka," he said, once he got his heart voice and the blush that threatened to show under control. Her eyes started to droop. Sasuke noticed. She yawned before answering him. "Good, 'cause I'd kick your ass good if you spied on the women's onsen like Erosenin." She brought the trailing hand up to rub her eyes, then let it fall down bonelessly. "Kakashi-sensei likes to get you up, huh?" She giggled lightly. "He used to pop by 2 years ago. He didn't wake me up, but he'd bring those disgusting things and ask me to eat them." Her nose wrinkled at the memory. "Disgusting things?" Sasuke inquired, crossing his arms comfortably across his chest. "Yeah, vegetables and fruits." "Yawn. Yucks." A corner of the brunette's mouth lifted in Sasuke's version of an exasperated smile. "No wonder you're stupid and small. You don't eat your vegetables." I am not stupid, came the sleepy protest, and the dangling arm shook a fist at him. Sasuke's smile widened a little, and his onyx eyes traced her relaxed features. It's good that Kakashi-sensei comes by once in a while, Naruto murmured. Sasuke's face darkened. He does it to annoy me. A passive-aggressive gesture, he replied. The blonde head shook lazily in disagreement, and a yawn was heard before the reply. He does it because he cares. That's his way. Sasuke watched the blue eyes close. No, he does it because he blames me for you leaving. Everyone does, including myself. Baka Sasuke, Naruto reprimanded sleepily. Kakashi-sensei isn't like that, or he'd hate me for taking away his sensei. He isn't the type to hold grudges. He really cares. Sasuke snorted, but he didn't dismiss Naruto's words easily. Sides, the blonde continued in the same sleepy tone. It's not entirely your fault I left. He felt the weight of the guilt of her leaving ease a little, and he was sure it showed on his face. He wanted Naruto to elaborate, but it was obvious from her tone that that was all she would say. A comfortable silence filled the room. Naruto's eyes had closed completely, and her upper back was rising and falling in a gentle rhythm. Sasuke was contemplating scooting closer so he could better watch her in the dim moonlight when she spoke. You should smile more, Sasuke, she murmured. Sasuke wasn't sure whether she was talking to him or just sleep-talking. She continued, You look so much like Itachi Nizan, yet you look so different. Sasuke stiffened and frowned deeply. Don't do that, bastard, Naruto scolded sleepily, and cracked an eye open to look at him for a second before closing it again. She exhaled a long breath. I like looking at you better than Itachi Nizan, especially when you smile. When he woke up the next morning, still leaning against the door, she was gone again. But this time, instead of cursing, a slightly goofy smile curved his lips when he remembered what she had said last night. Naruto gleefully slurped up her ramen. She set down the bowl and burped. Thanks, Sasuke. Sasuke smiled faintly. Will you be coming by tomorrow? He asked. The blonde scrunched up her face, thinking. Let's see. Today's the 5th night I'm here, so, nope. I won't be here tomorrow night. Tonight's my last in a while. Sasuke's spirits dropped at that statement. He had been in unusually good spirits these past few days. It had even shown on his face and in his general manner. The staff at the Hokage Tower had been giving him curious looks when they thought he wasn't looking, and Sakura had asked him point-blank during their ramen lunch yesterday. He had given her one of his looks and she had dropped the topic. But now the reason for his... He didn't quite know what to call the emotion he was feeling. He wasn't exactly happy, but perhaps it was a faint happiness. Anyways, the reason for his good mood had just told him she wouldn't be dropping by for who knew how long more. She had appeared the previous 4 nights in succession after almost 6 weeks of absence, and ate his ramen every night, and spent the night in his bed, too. Unfortunately, in inner Sasuke's opinion, he wasn't in the same bed at the same time. He was getting an ache in his back and dark circles under his eyes from sitting on the floor at night and watching her sleep until his eyelids drooped on their own accord. But it was worth it to have her near. Naruto continued, oblivious to Sasuke's thoughts. I've got a sort of mission coming up with Itachi Nizan and Kisame in 2 days' time, so, yeah. Tomorrow night's my last for a while. I don't know how long it'll be before I can raid your kitchen cupboards again. She burped and stretched, not noticing Sasuke's eyes narrowing at a certain phrase she'd used, then following her movements and resting on her smiling face. I don't know how I survived without coming here for ramen at night. Just a few days in a row and I'm so comfortable with it. Definitely gonna miss this during the mission. She smiled wistfully, then turned to look straight at Sasuke, whose heart gave an extra strong thump. She grinned at him, and his heart skipped a few beats. I definitely owe you, Sasuke, she declared. Sasuke took a moment to ponder. The Naruto he knew years ago would have rather bitten off his own arm before saying something like that. Then a devious idea popped into his head. One that made his heart race just thinking about what would happen if she said yes. Yes, you owe me, he told her. He was sure his eyes must have glinted evilly or something, but she was happily rocking on the back 2 legs of the chair and wasn't really paying attention to him. She replied absently, and ran a hand through her hair. Sasuke smirked. He hadn't smirked in a long time. She was still balancing the chair on 2 legs and apparently thinking of something. He decided to unveil his evil plan. Since you owe me, I know of a way you can repay me. Go on a date with me. Sir Nanny? She had begun to reply automatically when what he was asking sank into her head. and she stared at him in shock before losing balance and crashing to the floor in a loud clatter. Sasuke couldn't help it. He laughed lightly at the sight of her shocked face goggling at him from the pile of limbs and chair on the floor. He quickly got up, pulled the chair away from her and set it on its feet, smirking. He kept the smirk on his face, but his stomach was invaded by nervous butterflies as he slowly reached down, gently grabbed her upper arm and pulled her upright. He could feel she was very tense under his grasp, and was trembling lightly. Her eyes were squeezed shut and her lips were set in a thin, straight line, and her face had a look of intense concentration, like she was trying to figure out the solution to a difficult and unpleasant problem. The brunette reluctantly let go of her arm. "Are you all right?" he asked. Came out softer than he had intended, but he didn't care. She took a deep breath before replying. "I'll be fine," she answered as softly as he had spoken. Silence fell upon the house, broken only by the sound of Naruto's breathing, which slowly went back to normal as Sasuke watched her intently. Sasuke smiled gently as she slowly opened her eyes and turned to him, and he heard her breath hitch when she focused on him. They stared at each other for what seemed like a single moment, yet stretched a whole eternity. Naruto was the first to break the unusual silence. She turned away and smoothed down her cloak and ran her fingers through her hair. The moment over, Sasuke sat down in his chair again, and waited as the blonde plopped into her chair that he'd straightened earlier. "How'd you expect me to go out with you? A missing nin on a date with the Rokudaime Hokage?" she asked him, grinning lopsidedly. Sasuke's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't turned him down. He took it as a good sign. A very good sign. "Simple," he answered, smirking a little. "Henge isn't an option since we have the Hyuga in Konoha. So, hair dye, makeup, and contact lenses." Naruto pursed her lips contemplatively, and Sasuke fought the urge to lean over and kiss those lips. He forced his eyes away from her red lips to her eyes. "You're crazy," was her conclusion. Sasuke chuckled lightly. He felt lighthearted, knowing she wasn't turning him down. "You've rubbed off on me," he replied. She scowled. "I don't have anything to wear, unless you don't mind me wearing this Akatsuki cloak." Her eyes gleamed mischievously. Sasuke smirked, and Naruto moved back a little at the sight of it. It was a "you're not getting off that easily" smirk. "I have some dresses," he began. Naruto choked on spit. "You kinky bastard." Her mouth opened and closed a few times, and her cheeks turned red. "Man, I can just imagine you in a dress." Her eyes were wide and unfocused. A small blush spread across her face, the mental image presumably playing in her mind. Sasuke flushed. "No, baka." An eyebrow twitched, as did a fist. Naruto came back to earth and winked suggestively at him, grinning widely. "Hey, I don't mind your kinkiness. Heck, I'd kill to see you in a dress." Sasuke's eyes widened and his jaw hung loose for a few seconds as a fierce blush crept onto his cheeks. Naruto laughed hysterically and slapped him on the back. He was immediately broken from the spell at her action, and quickly turned to her. She had stopped laughing and was looking thoughtfully at her left hand, the one that had touched him so casually, so naturally. Sasuke noted with a sense of gladness that she wasn't trembling or shaking. She closed her eyes for a second, then turned to him, grinning. The laughter was back in her eyes, and it was such a contrast to the blank eyes Sasuke remembered seeing the first few times she reappeared in Konoha. "Seriously, I wouldn't mind you getting kinky," she said slyly. Sasuke smirked, his composure regained. "Only if you get kinky together with me," he answered in a husky voice. Her eyes widened a little and her breath hitched. Cerulean blue stared into deep onyx, but neither managed to get deep, since both were so guarded. Naruto looked away first. "You kinky bastard," she repeated a little shakily. Sasuke forced his pounding heart to slow down. The blonde shook herself and grinned. Sasuke smiled faintly. "So, kinky Sasuke, you were saying?" Sasuke's eyes narrowed slyly and a little evil grin curved his lips. Naruto raised an eyebrow. "As I was saying before your perverted self interrupted," he replied. "I have some dresses, ladies' kimono, actually. They used to belong to my Okayasan." Naruto blanched a little. "Ah, sorry. I wouldn't have made fun of you if I had known they were your Okayasans." Sasuke waved it away. "It was nothing. Don't worry," he smirked. "Back to business. I can provide the kimono, the hair dye, the makeup, and the contacts. Any other questions?" Naruto's face scrunched up adorably, doing funny things to Sasuke's insides and making his smirk loosen into a fond smile. How are you going to get the other stuff? She asked, putting her elbows on the table so her palms could cradle her cheeks, pushing them so that they looked squished against her face. You don't have to worry about that. Now, he said. Can you be here during the Sakura season? Konoha is having the annual Sakura festival, which Tsunade and I are to officiate. His voice and expression turned a little hesitant, and a faint pink dusted his cheeks. His gaze lowered from her face to bashfully focus on the table as he fought his sudden nervousness. I was hoping you could accompany me. That is, I hope you could be my D-date to the festival. His blush rose with each stutter and the continued silence from Naruto. When he finally gathered enough courage to look at her face, he saw she was smirking mischievously. You do a pretty mean impression of Hinata, Sasuke, she exclaimed, and broke into a wide grin. All bashfulness fled from him, and Sasuke scowled and turned away. A small feeling of hurt rose in him when he realized that Naruto wasn't taking him seriously. But her next sentence chased the thoughts and hurt away. I'd love to go on a date with you, Sasuke. The sincerity in her voice was unmistakable. Sasuke's eyes quickly rested on her face, and at the sight of her warm, gentle smile, his heart thudded against his chest and he felt like he was somewhere in between the heavens and earth, frozen in time. He finally managed. Thank you, Naruto. The blonde blinked very slowly. The pleasure is mine, she answered softly. Sasuke's heart seemed to have expanded and was now trying to burst out of his ribcage. A silly, goofy grin stretched his lips before he managed to tone it down into a small smile. He definitely couldn't wait for their date. He told her the date of the festival's opening day. Can you make it? He asked a little anxiously. You'll need to be here one day earlier so you can dye your hair. I understand if you can't. Please be able to come. Please be able to make it. Inner Sasuke cried, pulling on his bangs anxiously. Naruto rubbed her chin thoughtfully. No promises, she replied slowly. But I think I should be able to be here. Inner Sasuke bounced off mental walls. Sasuke felt relief wash over him, and nervousness in anticipation of their date began to set in. He couldn't help smiling at her, and worked hard to resist the urge to put his arms around her and pull her close. Naruto smiled back, then cracked a large yawn and blinked back a few yawn-induced tears. She rubbed her yes, then ran a hand through her hair and scratched her scalp lazily. I think it's gotten pretty late. I have to get going early tomorrow, so... She paused uncertainly and looked at Sasuke hesitantly. The brunette almost rolled his eyes at her. She'd been sleeping in his bed for the past 4 nights and every night that she'd dropped by previously, and each time she dared not impose herself on him. You're welcome in my bed any time, he said without thinking, then tried to force back a blush when Naruto raised an eyebrow and grinned. You pervert. Kinky pervert bastard. She wiggled her eyebrows suggestively at him. Sasuke's heart was racing, but he managed to smirk in what he hoped was a sexy manner. Only if you get kinky and perverted with me, remember? He said huskily, and watched in satisfaction as she swallowed when her eyes met his. He stood up and walked to his bedroom after turning off the kitchen lights. He heard her chair scrape back and her barely audible footsteps following him. As had become usual for the past 4 nights, he entered the bedroom first, held the door open for her, then closed it and sealed the room after she entered. He turned around to settle in his usual position, but noticed with faint curiosity that instead of lying down near the edge of his king-sized bed like she always did, this time she lay on her side near the further edge of the bed. She avoided his eyes. I feel bad for making you sit on the floor all the time while I use your bed, she said quietly. Why don't you, come and lean against the edge of the bed, at the very least. She stretched her hand and patted the edge of the mattress she usually lay on. Sasuke's pulse started accelerating as he slowly walked the short distance and sat down so that his side leaned against the bed. He cradled his head with his arms so that they were resting on the mattress in such a way that he could watch her unobtrusively. He didn't say anything, but kept his eyes on her the whole time, and noticed how she was following his movements. Very slowly and hesitantly, the hand nearest to him reached out and gently stroked his cheek. Her hand was shaking lightly, but her eyes were guarded. Sasuke closed his eyes and leaned into her touch, and immediately missed the warmth when her hand returned to her side. His skin tingled where she had touched, and he forced himself to remember the sensation of her skin against his. She fell asleep not too long after that, and Sasuke watched her until he too drifted off to sleep. Sasuke sat in his usual chair in his kitchen, resisting the urge to get up and pace. Instead, his fingers tapped out an impatient rhythm on the wooden table. Naruto was late. Alright, fine. She wasn't late, Percy. She was usually already in his apartment and into his ramen by the time he got home. But tonight she hadn't appeared yet, and Sasuke was a little worried. Who knew what could have happened during the past weeks? Practically every hidden village had declared Akatsuki their enemy, and almost all the villages had kill-on-sight orders issued, secondary only to run-for-your-life orders. Speaking of other hidden villages, Sasuke was reminded of Tsunagakure. He remembered how Gaara almost killed him the first time the Kazekage came to Konoha and found out that Naruto had disappeared. He had constantly demanded updates of the situation, and had even sent out some Suna search parties, but to no avail. Then, about 3 years ago, he had abruptly stopped questioning Konoha about Naruto. Had he known about Naruto? If so, did she make him keep the secret? It began to rain even more heavily outside, but Sasuke didn't pay attention. Tomorrow was the opening ceremony of Konohagakure's annual Sakura festival. Tsunade had grudgingly reminded him about their joint responsibility to officiate the ceremony tomorrow. Sasuke was just relieved that it was mainly just a formality, and that he did not have to make fancy speeches about how he loved the village and other such nonsense. Suddenly, a spike in chakra signaled the apparition of a cloaked figure into the room. The cloaked figure quickly hinged into an empty instant ramen cup that clattered to the floor. Sasuke would have raised an eyebrow, but he felt the incoming chakra signatures, and soon there were a series of smart knocks on his kitchen window. He scowled lightly and got up to open the window. On the way, he kicked the ramen cup out of sight under the table. What? He barked at the two Anbu crouching on the wall in such a way that they could peer into the window. My apologies, Rokudame-sama, but an Akatsuki member was spotted in Sector 11 of the village. Anbu 8 is in active pursuit. Sasuke didn't have to feign his displeasure at their incompetence. His scowl deepened. How many times has this happened? Your superiors will have to answer to me for your incompetence after the festival. Apprehend the criminal, or be demoted to Chunin. He slammed the window shut in their faces, and scowled at the puddle on the floor under the window, and at his own damp standard-issue turtleneck front. He wiped some water from his face and cast a privacy seal onto his apartment. A poof sounded, then a thunk as Naruto bumped her head on the underside of his table. Ow! She grumbled, and crawled out rubbing her head. You didn't have to kick that hard, bastard. Sasuke felt so relieved to see her unharmed, though soaking wet, but he scowled at her. You're late. She scowled back. I ran into some problems, as you know. You conveniently forgot to mention the increased security. I had to lead them away from your place or people would be wondering what the Rokudame Hokage was doing letting an Akatsuki member into his house in the middle of the night. Sasuke smiled faintly at that, and really wanted to hug her close, to feel her pressed against him, and to let her know how worried he was. His concern for her alarmed him to some degree. It was at such odds with his usual cold self, but at the same time it felt natural and welcome even. He closed his eyes and sighed. Kagebunshin, huh? He said instead, referring to whatever the Anbu were chasing in Sector 11. She grinned impishly. Oh yeah. He sighed fondly and walked out of the kitchen, beckoning her to follow. He heard her hiss slightly, as if in pain, and turned around in concern. Naruto had a hand pressed to her side and was grimacing. She looked up to see Sasuke looking at her, and waved the other arm at him dismissively. It's nothing. Just a slight cut I got during a mission, she said. Sasuke rolled his eyes and shot her an exasperated look. 20 years old and you still can't protect yourself. Looks like you need me around to protect you, dobe? He drawled rather condescendingly. Naruto scowled darkly at him, as arrogant as ever. Don't need your help, she told him angrily, and moved her eyes away from his face. She stomped past him into his bedroom and sat heavily on the bed, crossing her arms across her chest and scowling. She didn't switch on the light, so Sasuke did as he entered. She blinked at the sudden brightness and turned to stare at the floor to his left. Sasuke sighed softly. He hadn't really meant to insult her. It just came naturally. If you come back to Konoha, you wouldn't have to get hurt all the time, he said softly as he stood in front of her. She didn't turn to him, but her scowl became darker and she fisted her hands tightly. I'm a ninja. Getting hurt is part of the job description, she told him through gritted teeth. Her fists tightened. And I've told you before. I'm not coming back to Konoha. Sasuke's eyebrows creased as he frowned. He crouched down. Why not? He demanded quietly. You've never told me. He could see her fists tighten even more until they started to shake. She took some deep breaths before replying. I have told you, I'm the bane of Konoha. Why would I want to come back? Not when I can live where people don't glare coldly at me for something I have no control over, and curse me behind my back. She abruptly turned to him. Her eyes were hidden by her bangs, but he could almost feel their intensity. Listen, Sasuke, I came here because you asked me on a date, not to get the 3rd degree from you. Can we drop this topic? Or else I'm leaving. Sasuke stiffened and frowned. Naruto looked away. The brunette clenched his fists a little angrily as silence descended on the room. He wanted to know her reasons for staying away. It seemed so hypocritical of her, wanting to be Hokage and forever trying to drag him back when they were younger, only now to stay away from the village, not wanting to come back. Yet, at the same time, if there was one thing Uchiha Sasuke knew about Uzumaki Naruto, it was that the blonde was never a hypocrite, and Sasuke was very sure it wasn't any different for Namikaze's Naruto. Unfortunately, she obviously didn't want to talk about it, and him pressing her about the issue would only drive her away. It was something he could not afford to do right now. He wanted her near so much. He thought of her and missed her and worried about her when during the days she was away, and wanted to have her by his side and protect her from Akatsuki and the blinded, close-minded people of Konoha. He wanted to help her overcome her haphophobia, then hold her so close he could feel her heartbeat against his. His brows furrowed even more. He was aware of the fact that he obviously thought of her as more than a rival, an ex-teammate, or even a mere friend. The question was, did he want to let go of his inhibitions and let down his walls to allow the feelings to grow? More importantly, did she feel for him even the slightest of what he felt for her? He inhaled and exhaled deeply and slowly, and looked up to see Naruto peering curiously at him with only traces of her earlier scowl left on her face. He stood up and ran his fingers through his hair as he turned away from her. The stuff is in the bathroom in a paper bag. You can't miss it. I also included a special type of body lotion that will disguise your skin tone and scent. He indicated towards the bathroom. Okay, Naruto replied, then suddenly hissed in pain when she stood up. Sasuke whirled around in concern to see her bent over a little, gingerly pressing a hand to her side. It's nothing, she gritted out, then squeezed her eyes shut as another wave of pain seemed to overtake her. It's not nothing, Sasuke said a little snappishly. Annoyed that he couldn't touch her to examine the wound, Naruto managed a glare in his direction before unbuttoning her cloak and letting it fall to the floor. Sasuke frowned deeply at the state of her clothes. They were bloodied and torn. What worried him the most, however, was the piece of metal he saw sticking out from her side. He slowly stepped nearer to her. You call that nothing? He asked and glared at her. How did you get that? She glared at him again before contorting her face in pain. I got in the way of a kunai wrapped with an exploding note. 2 pieces got in when it exploded to bits. The other piece is out, and now the Kyuubi's chakra is pushing this one out so the wound can heal. Don't worry. It's about to come out already. Sasuke watched in morbid fascination with his Sharingan activated. He could see the orange-red chakra surrounding the metal in a wave-like pattern, pushing it out of Naruto's side. I'll pull it out, he said. Naruto quickly shook her head. No need, it's coming out, she rasped, taking a step back. Sasuke shook his head, his Sharingan spinning slowly. It'll be faster if I pull it out, he insisted. He had almost added a dobe at the end of that sentence. Trust me. Naruto stiffened at his last 2 words and glanced up at him. She was frowning in pain, but otherwise she didn't move. Sasuke took it as permission and stepped nearer to her. He could see her eyes were following his every move. Sasuke slowly lifted his hand and firmly gripped the piece of metal sticking out of her flesh. He could see her tense up even more. You need to relax. This will probably hurt a little, he told her. 1, 2, and he peeled the kunai piece out smoothly. Naruto gave a small grunt of pain and closed her eyes. Sasuke put the bloodied metal piece onto his nightstand and flashed through some hand seals. A pale green sphere of chakra enveloped his hands, and he let his palms hover over the bleeding wound in Naruto's side. She started in surprise. You know healing jutsu? She asked. Sasuke grunted, feeling a little offended at her surprised tone. Chen. Sakura taught me. Now stay still and keep quiet or I might grow you a tumor. He didn't look up at her face, but she kept still. He watched the edges of her skin ease together and fuse under his palms, and let go when the process was complete. He exhaled and sat back on his haunches, and glanced up at the blonde, who was having an impressed look on her face. She reached down to poke at the newly closed wound. Sasuke quickly swatted her hand away, but not before she managed one poke. Ow! She quickly retracted her hand and moved a few steps back. Don't touch it yet, Baka. You might reopen it, Sasuke scolded, and stood up to sit on the bed. He looked up to see her staring at him with an unreadable expression on her face. Her eyes were partially hidden by her blonde fringe. He stared back at her, trying to fathom what she was thinking, but after a while she shook herself and grinned. The stuff's in the bathroom, any? I'll get started then. She left the room. Sasuke reached down to pick up her discarded Akatsuki cloak. It was thoroughly wet and muddy in a few spots. He ran his fingers over the tear that corresponded to the wound he had just healed, and turned the cloak around to find another similar tear, probably the entry site of the second piece of metal. He closed his eyes and grimaced for a moment, then stood and took a hanger out of his clothes cupboard and hung the cloak on one of the pegs standing in a row on the wall. That done, he walked out of his bedroom to the living room, seated himself on the couch and reached for a scroll he had left there when he had arrived home earlier. Usually he would have finished his work in the office, but today he had decided to take the scroll home with him to wait for Naruto. He left at the same time as his secretary, who had given him a strange look, since he had never left before or at the same time she did. He immersed himself in reading the scroll, only vaguely aware that Naruto was taking her own sweet time in the bathroom. After about an hour, he heard the bathroom door open, and looked up in anticipation. A few seconds later, a dark brown head poked itself into the room, followed by the rest of the body it was attached to. Sasuke looked over the disguised Naruto judgmentally. The dye he had given her turned her hair a rich mahogany brown, and the lotion he had provided covered up her tan quite well, leaving her with a skin tone almost as pale as his. Cheek pads made her formerly well-defined cheekbones more chubby. She had tried on the makeup and contacts, so her whisker marks were gone, and her eyes were now a nondescript chocolate brown. Altogether she didn't look particularly memorable or outstanding, or Naruto-ish, just the way he had planned it. With a tight feeling in his chest he realized he wanted the real blue-eyed blonde, not a fake brown-hued woman. He sighed softly and smiled gently at her. She was looking at him quizzically, dressed in one of his yukata that he had laid out for her. It was a little too big for her, but not by much since he wasn't that much bigger than her. I look really different, she remarked, pushing up the loose sleeves of the yukata as she rubbed her pale arms. The cheek pads in her mouth made her voice a little different. That would be the whole point, he answered dryly. She replied by sticking out her tongue at him and flinging herself into the chair beside his. He pushed back an absent-minded wish that she'd seated herself beside him on the sofa instead of in another chair, and picked up the scroll again. A soft growl interrupted his reading, and he looked up with a bemused face to see Naruto rubbing her stomach sheepishly. Haven't eaten since last night, since I was kinda in a hurry to get here, she informed him. He felt a prickle of warmth in his chest at what she said. She had actually hurried here, and didn't even stop to eat. He didn't know for sure if Naruto's eating habits had changed, and he didn't think they had, but he was pretty sure Naruto willingly skipping a meal was a big deal. The corners of his lips corked up in a small smile, and he casually jabbed a finger in the direction of his kitchen. You know where the ramen is, he said, and his smile grew at the way her now brown eyes widened and her lips stretched into a pleased grin. She bounced off the chair and practically ran to the kitchen. You totally rock, Sasuke, she called back. Sasuke closed his eyes and breathed out as his fingers unconsciously tightened around the scroll. It was the second time she had almost let that word slip. Did she really mean it, or was it just a figure of speech? Then again, if it was just a figure of speech, she wouldn't stop herself from finishing the word, right? But if she meant to say what Sasuke thought, hoped, inner Sasuke supplied and got trashed for this troubles. Why did she always cut herself off? Maybe she didn't really feel that way. After all, he did almost kill her when they were genin, and all but kicked her out of the village himself 5 years ago. The sounds of Naruto bustling back into the living room made him look up. She was carrying a tray he didn't know he had, and on the tray were at least 8 steaming cups of ramen. He gave her a fondly exasperated look, and she pouted at him. What? I am hungry. To his mild surprise, she carefully handed him 1 cup, together with a pair of chopsticks. She shrugged in response to his quirked eyebrow. Just thought you might be hungry too. If you aren't, it's fine, 'cause there's always room for more ramen in my stomach. Sasuke smiled, feeling touched that she'd actually prepared 1 cup for him. Thanks. They quietly ate their ramen. Sasuke noticed that Naruto wasn't eating as messily and loudly as usual, and commented on it. The blonde half scowled, half pouted at him. Mine, you and Itachi Nizan are so similar. He told me he'd stick me in Tsukiyomi if I didn't learn some manners and etiquette. Sasuke's expression and mood darkened at the mention of that man's name. He didn't like the fact that he was still alive, and that Naruto was hanging around him more than she was around Sasuke. The blonde merely examined him for a few moments with an expression Sasuke couldn't figure out, then yawned and stood up. I'm dead tired, she said, and yawned again. She stretched, and Sasuke caught himself appreciating the way his yukata slid and tightened over her chest as her arms went upwards. Let's go to bed, Sasuke, she yawned, and stood up to start walking toward his bedroom. Sasuke pointedly ignored the jolt his lower regions felt at her words, and rolled up the scroll neatly before getting up and heading to his bedroom, trying to stop his heart from pounding so hard. She was putting away the brown contact lenses when he entered. He waited for her to finish and sit on the bed before switching off the light and walking towards the bed, feeling just so warm and strangely content at how wonderfully normal these actions felt, as they were part of their nightly routine. His chest tightened with the longing for it to come true. He sat himself in a comfortable position and rested his head on the mattress, and smiled gently at her. She started to smile back, but ended up yawning instead. What were you reading earlier, Sook? She asked, blinking at him. He could barely make out the blue of her eyes. He didn't hesitate to answer. Negotiations for an alliance from Takigakure. Naruto thought for a while, then chuckled lightly. Yeah, I remember that place with the weird water and that whiny guy. What are their terms? She either didn't see that it wasn't exactly proper for the Rokudaime Hokage to be discussing village affairs with a missing nin, an Akatsuki member, no less, in the bedroom, or just didn't care. It was the latter in Sasuke's case. They want an exchange of some jutsu, but their list of jutsu that we don't already know is too short. There is nothing we can gain from them in terms of trade, and they aren't willing to hand over any samples of their hero water. Tell them the most Konoha would do is to teach them basic medical jutsu, and maybe a couple of ninjutsu, and that we'd accept their list of jutsu. Intel concerning village security, like rumors of wars or the movement of common enemies, must be shared wholly and willingly. If they want more than that, then they might as well swear allegiance to Konoha and become a Konoha outpost, with their hero person a subordinate of the Hokages. The Rokudaime was impressed, and let it show in his face, together with a raised eyebrow. She caught his expression and looked away. I mean, those are the terms I'd state if I was Ho, if I had to decide. She yawned and curled up, bringing her knees halfway up to her chin and curling an arm over them. Sasuke sighed, and looked away as the feeling of guilt came back. You'd make a better Hokage than me, he murmured. He couldn't quite keep the longing out of his voice as he spoke again. If only you'd come back. He looked to the blonde to see that she had closed her eyes and her face was blank. Please, let's not get into that again, Sook. Her voice was a little pleading. And I've told you, stop feeling guilty about me leaving the village. It wasn't merely you could say that it was mostly because of Konoha. She exhaled, and a small smile curved her lips. Oyasumi, Sook. Sasuke stared at her for a long moment before closing his eyes. Oyasumi, Naruto. Sasuke stirred lightly as a faint ray of sunlight hit his face. He squeezed his eyes shut, then opened them, and was rewarded with the picture of a sweet face, whose eyes were closed in sleep. For a split second he tensed, then his sleep-clouded brain cleared enough for him to remember that it was Naruto. He felt his heart expand within his chest, and realized that he loved waking up beside her, although he would much prefer her natural blonde hair and tan skin. Her makeup that hid the whisker marks had rubbed off a little onto his pillow. He noticed in annoyance, so that the marks were partially visible. He watched as her nose twitched, followed by her eyelids. Then she blearily opened her eyes, and Sasuke almost hungrily drank in the sight of her cerulean blue irises. She blinked as she focused on him. Then she gave him a gentle, sweet smile, and he all but melted. It was official. He wanted it so much, to wake up next to her every morning. Oh heyo, she whispered, and giggled softly. He smiled in the dim dawn sunlight. Oh heyo, he whispered back. Very slowly, he reached out and cupped her cheek, and let his fingers trail over her skin as he drew his hand back. His gaze never left her eyes, and their smiles never left their faces, though Naruto did stiffen a little. Don't I get a good morning kiss? Sasuke whispered teasingly, enjoying the light pink that dusted her cheeks. His breath caught as she brought her hand to touch her lips slowly and deliberately, then slowly let that hand move over to his face and pressed the fingers she had kissed to his lightly trembling lips. Her eyes never left his. She was rewarded with a dazed smile as she pulled back her hand. "Thank you," he whispered, and she grinned mischievously at him. "Why are we whispering?" she whispered. Sasuke grinned lightly. "I don't know," he whispered back. She giggled girlishly, then turned to face the ceiling as she stretched luxuriously. Sasuke watched her movements appreciatively. He shook his head a little, then got up and stretched, and looked to the bed to find Naruto's eyes on him. "You go ahead and use the bathroom first," he told her. She nodded and hopped off the bed. Sasuke dropped gracefully into the bed and snuggled into the warmth she left behind. He scowled at the makeup-stained pillow and pulled off the soiled cover so as to use the bare pillow. He buried his face in it, but knew that her scent wouldn't be there. The body lotion he gave her ensured that much. It erased her original scent and replaced it with a flowery, perfume-like one. About 10 minutes later, she re-entered the room clad in the same yukata, but looked fresher. He watched her put on makeup and style her hair into a simple bun, leaving the contacts for last at his request. He wanted to see as much of those blue eyes as he could. Finally she turned to him. Her skin was pale due to the lotion, and her eyelids had a pastel purple hue, thanks to the makeup he had provided. Her whisker marks were reconcealed, and her lips were a pastel pink that made him want to kiss her. "The kimono is in my cupboard," he said, lazily stretching out his leg and pointing with a toe to indicate the cupboard as he hugged the pillow to his chest. She nodded cheerfully, went over to the cupboard and opened it. Sasuke watched her eyes widen. "It's beautiful," she exclaimed softly, lifting out the kimono. It was dark purple, with pale purple and pink sakura flowers and petals, seemingly swept by a breeze to swirl around the kimono. Rising from the lower hem to knee were delicate bamboo shoots. The leaves were pastel green and the stems were pale brown. The obi was blue in color, a cerulean blue that matched the original color of her eyes. Sasuke swung his legs over the edge of the bed and sat up. "It was one of my mother's favorite kimono. I guess it's the one I liked best, too." He ran his fingers through his bangs and smiled gently at the way Naruto's expression softened. With a small, soft smile on her lips, she ran a hand over the delicate embroidery of the kimono's designs. It was one of the reasons Sasuke liked the kimono very much. The patterns of sakura and bamboo were actually embroidered on the material and not mere prints. He vaguely remembered liking to run his hands over the silky cloth and feel the embroidery when he was young and his mother was still alive. He pushed himself off the bed and went to the bathroom to bathe and do his morning routine. In less than 10 minutes, he exited the bathroom and entered his room to see Naruto fully dressed and seated demurely on his bed. She looked up shyly, and he saw that the contacts were in, and sighed inwardly. He sat next to her, but at a distance she'd be comfortable with. "Thank you for taking me on this date, Sasuke-san," Naruto said in a shy voice, not quite meeting his eyes. Her hands were folded gently in her lap. It was so unlike her that Sasuke shot her a deadpan look and raised an eyebrow. "What's up with you? Why are you so shy and formal all of a sudden?" The demure look disappeared and she looked half annoyed and half frustrated. She folded her arms across her chest and stuck her tongue out at him. "Che," she said. "I was just getting into character. I can't be my usual loud self, and I can't be the squealing, clinging girlfriend, so all that's left is the sweet, shy girl." She looked a little embarrassed and turned her eyes away from his. Sasuke blinked, then chuckled. He was a little amused and quite touched that she had thought quite a bit about their date. "I see. Not bad," he said, his lips curved in a smirk. "All right, now listen closely. This will be your cover story." He outlined the background he had made up for the person Naruto would be pretending to be, and told her to sneak out of Konoha and come back in through the gate. He would meet her there. They went into the kitchen, where he pulled out some pork buns from his fridge and handed 2 to her, keeping one for himself and eating it. "You remember everything? Because if you don't, you might get discovered, and with stepped-up security you'd probably get caught before I can get you out safely," he started to say with a vaguely worried look, but she interrupted him, scowling and rolling her eyes. Yeah, I know, Sasuke, and I can handle it. I'm a good ninja. If I've come this far with the Akatsuki, I can definitely handle one day in Konoha with you." Sasuke didn't fully understand how coming this far with the Akatsuki equated her being able to handle herself, but he didn't press it. Instead, he nodded. Fine. You'd best get going now. It's almost an hour past dawn, and the civilians will be stirring soon. He really wanted to give her a quick hug and a kiss on the cheek, but settled for grabbing her hand and giving it a firm squeeze before letting go. He was relieved that she didn't start or pull away, although she did tense. She grinned and nodded at him. Okay. See you in 3 hours, bastard. She disappeared in a puff of smoke. Be safe, Sasuke thought to her. Sasuke strode elegantly down the streets of Konoha, heading towards the gates. He had met with various people in charge of various parts of the festival, inspected the stage and security for one last time, and was now on his way to get his date. He realized he was a little nervous. His palms were a little sweaty. His heart was going faster than normal, and butterflies had taken up residence in his stomach. None of it registered on his face, though. He made sure of that. It was his first date. Women had thrown themselves at him, hoping to snag the Rokadame, but he'd turned them flat. Even before Naruto made her reappearance, he hadn't been interested in any of the women, so much so that rumors had been going around about his sexuality, or lack thereof. And now here he was excited and nervous about his date with a disguised missing Nin, an Akatsuki member and man-turned-woman who was originally born a woman, who happened to be the daughter of the most beloved former Hokage, the Yondaime, and his former teammate and rival/best friend. Sasuke nodded to the people who bowed respectfully to him as he walked, and paid no attention to the fluttering eyelashes and simpering smiles. He took a deep breath as the huge gates came into view, and as he got nearer, he spotted the purple-clad figure waiting at the guardhouse, eyes cast demurely to the ground. It seemed the Chunin guards were trying to chat her up, and she kept shaking her head. With me? Your friend doesn't seem to be showing up. One of the Chunin, a brown-haired man, said with a predatory grin as he moved to stand next to Naruto, who smoothly stepped away. The other Chunin, a black-haired one, leered at Naruto. A surge of anger flashed through Sasuke, and he quickened his strides to reach the guardhouse. The two Chunin had now their backs to him, and were so concentrated on talking to Naruto that they didn't sense his approach. He saw that Naruto did sense him, and she finally looked up. A faint pink colored her cheeks before she quickly looked down again, with a smile playing at the corners of her lips. Sasuke narrowed his eyes and cleared his throat. A bit of killing intent leaked out, and the moment they sensed it, the two Chunin guards whirled around in a hurry. Their hands shot to their kunai pouches, but they both snapped upright and bowed smartly when they saw who it was. The Rokadame folded his arms across his chest. "Why are you both not at your post?" he asked coldly, glaring at them. "We were just speaking to this lady, Uchiha-sama," the brown-haired one replied quickly. The Uchiha's expression became frosty, and more killing intent leaked out. The nerve of these two trying to snag his date. "I wasn't aware that it was part of your duties to talk to every visitor who entered the gates," he snapped in an icy tone. The two Chunin were staring at the ground nervously. "We, began one of them, but Naruto's voice cut in. She spoke in a voice that was almost a whisper. "Sasuke-san," was all she said. Sasuke made a conscious effort to let go of his anger, and turned to her. She smiled gently at him, and he returned the gesture. He noticed the shock of the two Chunin, and realized that it was probably the first time he had ever smiled, to the knowledge of the residents of Konoha. "Hatsutori Kazuha," he greeted her warmly, using an alias he had cooked up. "Welcome to my village, Konohagakure. I hope these imbeciles have not disturbed you in any way," he said, narrowing his eyes at the staring Chunin, who scrambled back to their post and stared from that safer distance. She lifted her eyes to glance at him shyly, then dropped her gaze back to the ground. "I am honored that you would invite me, Sasuke-san. And these two gentlemen have been kindly keeping me company as I waited for you," she replied. "Kindly keeping me company." Sasuke almost snorted, but instead he gestured for her to enter. She took small, feminine steps to his side, and they walked into Konoha together. When they were out of earshot of the Chunin, Naruto spoke softly from the corner of her mouth, and Sasuke happily leaned in to listen, inwardly enjoying all the disappointed and jealous looks Naruto was getting from the majority of the single females they passed. He knew they looked good together. He had purposely chosen a royal blue kimono with a more masculine, geometric pattern of pale pink and purple sakura decorating the hems of the sleeve, and had bamboo shoots below the knees nearly identical to those on Naruto's kimono. They were basically matching and complementing each other. "What took you? I had to stand there and tolerate those two idiots. I so felt like giving them both a kick to the shins," Naruto whispered furiously, but kept her face a mask of politeness. Sasuke chuckled softly. "Sorry, Kazuha-san. Last-minute things. Naruto made a petulant sound, then stayed quiet and started to look at their surroundings as they made their way to the village center, where the opening ceremony would be held. A large crowd had gathered in front of the stage. As they approached the crowd, two ANBU suddenly materialized in front of Sasuke and dropped to one knee respectfully. Beside him, Naruto gave a short squeal and stumbled back a few steps. Sasuke quickly turned to her in alarm and saw the look of fright on her face. He shot to her side. "Are you all right, Kazuha-san?" he murmured in concern. "I am all right, Sasuke-san. Your ninja just startled me. That's all," she answered in a breathless voice that Sasuke knew right away she was faking. He mentally grinned at her quick thinking Hatsutori Kazuha had never met Anbyu before and would definitely have been startled, at the very least, by the sudden appearance of the two shinobi. "Uchiha-sama," one of them intoned, "Godame-sama requests your presence at the stage, as the ceremony will begin in 10 minutes. Sasuke nodded curtly at the ANBU, who rose to their feet, bowed, and disappeared. He turned to Naruto. "Good thinking," he whispered with a small grin, then continued in a louder voice. "I have to go, Kazuha-san. Will you be all right on your own?" He was truly concerned about leaving her alone. Kazuha's face smiled gently, but Sasuke could see her eyes harden. She replied, "Thank you for your concern, Sasuke-san, but I'm sure I'll be fine." Then she leaned near to him and whispered, "And if you ever insinuate that I'm not able to take care of myself again, I'll personally ensure that you won't be continuing the Uchiha line, bastard." She straightened, gave him a sweet smile that completely contradicted yet emphasized what she had just said, and demurely looked to the ground. Sasuke scowled. He was concerned about her, that baka, but it was such a Naruto-ish response that his scowl turned into a faint smile, and he actually chuckled softly. Naruto glanced at him curiously, but he just shook his head, then nodded to her and left for the stage. Hope you guys enjoy first part of this fanfic. Do like, share and subscribe and comment down for part 2.